Okay.
Hey, folks. Hey. Let's get this live cranking. Just trying to get my little settings here. Can you guys hear me? Y'all already know the drill. Sometimes this Mike wants to play games. I have to make sure it's good. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I know this thing isn't just delayed. All right, live chat. What are we doing here? I'm going to assume that you guys can because I see it pulling up on my screen. Perfect. Hey, guys. What's today? Thursday? Happy Thursday. Good to catch up with all of you. Like we normally do, we'll probably actually start the video in like 5 minutes. So in the meantime, let me get in my hellos to everybody really quick. Let's see. You can't see Hunter said, well, look who's on time. I've only been late to like 2 lives. And anytime I'm late, it's like a minute and a half-ish. But all right. Blessed Marie said, no, where's the Stimmy? I agree. We'll get to it. Let me see. Show hasn't even started already. I'm already seeing something on you. Okay, I can't. I need to get my glasses already. I feel like my eyes are getting worse with each live. Boom. Does he have a Patreon or something? I don't have a Patreon yet. And I don't have one because I feel like I'm not consistent enough to charge people for stuff at the moment. I'd have to be more consistent with content before I start trying to charge people. Plus, I feel like a lot of the information I try to share with you guys, I just want people to like know certain things. So I'm not even trying to charge like that. If you want to support me, just buy my music. Or at least stream it. You know, after about 100,000 y'all stream, I get about $3 and some change. What's up, Calvin? What's your sign? I am a Leo. My moon sign is an Aries, and my whatever the other sign is a Scorpio. So I got all the crazies mixed together. What's up, Vintage 101? Trisha Harris, Avocado Queen. Hello from Canada. Tracy, Byron, what's going on? That's right. Give me a beat. Sam J, hey. That says the Aries Kid Maze. What's going on? Eugene. It's always good to see you guys. Shaniqua to you, or Shanique to you. Sugar Lane. Tiffany Knight. I'm going to scroll a little bit so we can get started. Mickey said, hello, how's your day? Let me tell y'all how trifling my day is. You know what? Something that kind of annoys me? Y'all gassed up Panera Bread like it was supposed to be like this premier sandwich shop. You know, people will talk about, oh, it's so much better than like Potbelly, or I don't know if Quiznos still exists because I haven't seen one in years. But I rarely go to Panera. But I went a few days ago, and God, I don't understand why the sandwiches have such a hard crust. Have you ever had like one of their sandwiches? Like, man, like you bite into it and they have this super hard crust that you gotta dig into to chew. I'm like, dang, you trying to have me rip my filling out trying to eat this mess. And people gas that old overpriced sandwich place up. Never again. Like, man, food was nasty. I was like, y'all gas that place up. And then everything is bland. I tried to get like one of their soups one time. That crap was so just no flavor. It just was like hot water with a little bit of broth and like a noodle and a half. I was like, y'all done charge me about $9 for this little cup. Like, see, this is why people be violent. Like, y'all be playing with people. And I was so hungry too. Like, man, I mean, I'll give it to them for the cookies. Like, the cookies are cool. They do have like this green smoothie thing that's all right. But no, they are overpriced. The stuff people gas up, the nerve. Jesus, I mean, I had to really like check and make sure my tooth was still in good trying to bite into one of them sandwiches. Jeez, like, oh, clearly I need to open my own restaurant because if they can be in business, I can. I think I'm a pretty decent cook. I've been kind of cooking a lot more since the pandemic and stuff, you know, kicked in. And so I feel like I'm pretty decent. One of my friends says I'm only good at making fish, but they're just a hater. But I don't know. I don't know if they can do some restaurant, fast food chain and charge people $512 for a sandwich. I certainly could open like a cookie shop or something. My goodness. Yaya said, and who wants an apple with their sandwich? And then, yeah, you're going to charge me a whole, what? I don't know how much the apple is in conjunction with the meal, but you're not about to charge me for something I can pick off a tree. And I'm sure that apple probably is at least $2 when, you know, you count it in with the meal. The nerve. Somebody said your hair looks good. Thank you. I did it myself. All right, we got to get going because I don't want to. Somebody said you need a jackhammer to get into the bread. It's just the crust. Like the actual bread is okay-ish, but it's the crust. It's kind of like this one girl from Ethiopia had to correct me because I was talking about how I felt like sourdough bread was trash too. Because I'm like, sometimes that stuff be hard as a rock to get through too. And she's like, no, you just haven't had the real stuff. You keep having like that Americanized generic stuff with all the whatever they got in it. And so the bread is hard. I'm just like, I don't think bread is supposed to be hard to eat. Like, man, if the birds ain't eating it, clearly we shouldn't be eating it either. But no, she was saying like, no, you got to go to like Ethiopia or like Northeast Africa and actually get like the real sourdough bread. We just, whatever we're eating is like some imposter type stuff. Let's see. And don't ask me about Subway. I haven't had Subway in years. I'm beefing with them too. I think I told y'all this story one time, but like at my center, we were having this big giant like event for like our teenagers. Oh, it was for the teenage girls. And so you had all these different Black women in the different professions and everything coming. And it was supposed to be like this whole empowerment thing for my teenage girls. All I had to do was just take care of the logistics, and then my team starts it, and I'm not even in there because there was no men allowed. And so, you know, we're near a bunch of shopping centers and restaurants and stuff. And so, you know, we're looking for different places to partner with, and, you know, because sometimes these places will do a donation and it just helps. And we went to Subway, and they're like, oh yeah, we can gladly help you get a little, you know, some sandwiches, because the event was supposed to be for like maybe 80 people. And so they made us write a proposal of what we needed to do, you know, a list of what was going to happen, information about the company we were working for, the information about we went through hurdles. It was like a whole college assignment. I mean, rough draft, all this other stuff, went through all that. Now, mind you, this was 6 months ahead of the actual event. Like we mapped this out way ahead of the curve. And so as we got closer to maybe like the 4-week mark, we started checking in. And every single time we go there, the manager was never there. And the manager was there. He was just hiding in the back. But the manager would never be there. And they kept playing games and trying to play hard to get. And I had already found and secured other stuff. Like we had locked down Buffalo Wild Wings. We had locked down, there's a place called like Moe's. I think it's kind of like a Chipotle. We locked down a few other places. You know, Costco gave us some gift cards to go get, you know, pizza and some other stuff. Like we already had food. So I wasn't even pressed about Subway. But then finally, when it's like a week before, and we caught the manager because he couldn't run to the back that time. And then he was like, you know, talk to my staff, they'll take care of it. Okay, so we talked to the staff, and the lady's like, oh, well, we can probably give you about 3 sandwiches. It's like, wait, y'all done had us write dissertations and, you know, applications, and we've been playing hide and seek with y'all and all, and you want to give us, you know, 3 little footlongs that they were going to cut up. I was like, you know, don't even worry about it. But they still gave it to us. And then they didn't even make the sandwiches with love. You know how, like, I feel like if you're ever giving somebody food, you're supposed to like make the food with love. It's supposed to come from the heart. You can tell when somebody didn't half did something and gave it to you. They gave these kids some old dusty sandwiches. It was just like some bread, you know, whatever the meat was, a little bit of mayo and like some lettuce, and was like, here y'all go, take it. The karma is they got robbed like a week later. I said, that's what y'all get. I ain't been there since. So I haven't been to Subway since 2016. But no, they can keep it. Nasty sandwiches, I swear. Oh, Jersey Mike's, they're okay-ish. All right. I did not mean to start on this rant I was on. This was not even where I was going, but I just had to get that off my chest. Panera Bread, I'm still mad. Like my whole side of my face was almost swollen trying to eat that crap. Okay. Janelle said, have you heard about the couple suing Subway for the fake meat too? I saw that too. I remember they got sued with the bread having, what is it? Some kind of product in it that's also in the yoga mats. And, you know, that's a lot of those franchises because they want the food to last for so long. So they start putting stuff in it so it doesn't, you know, go bad as quickly. You know, it is what it is. But anyway, we got a lot to cover tonight. I got all my notes here. I don't know if we're going to get through all these because I'm not trying to be up with y'all till midnight tonight. But we'll see. I always say this and then we'll be on here for 3 hours. So where do we start? Let's start off with Texas and Mississippi. So as we know, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. It hasn't really gone anywhere. Things have gotten slightly better. You know, the numbers in relation to COVID have gone down a little bit, but they're still extremely high. They're still higher than they were before the summer and before the spring. And they are on kind of a plateau. But, you know, now you're seeing, I feel like a lot of people in leadership jumped the gun a little too early. So you see that the governor in Texas pretty much just lifted the full mask mandate in the state of Texas. And just to also be clear, there's other states that already have something like that in effect where they don't have mask mandates. So that part, as much as I'm side-eyeing, it's not uncommon because you're seeing it happen in other states already. But in addition, they also decided to, you know, pretty much open every business up at 100% full capacity. So it's a free-for-all, you know, just do whatever you want. And the power is up to the business owners or the cities or the counties or, you know, the towns to pretty much do what they do. But again, what I see in all of this is that really it's politicized. And I think that's the beef I have with what's happening. And I feel like that's why the United States is still in this nonsense, because every time you get half of a step somewhere, somebody always got to come and mess up the flow. And it's kind of like you already got enough going on with your state anyway in relation to what happened with the power and the electricity and the water and the snowstorm and the people who have died. And now it's like it's just like I don't get what the purpose is. I feel like low key, it's a way to kind of take off some of that bad smoke that was coming in relation to how they responded to the power crisis and the water crisis. And this is something that they can latch on and say, well, we did this in the best interest of the business owners and we decided to open up the economy. But again, it's like Texas, no disrespect, but y'all are number 2 right now for COVID cases in the country. And I could see if they did it in phases, like I could see if he said, okay, keep the mask mandate, but we're going to let you guys open at like 50% capacity. And if after 2 weeks, things are good, we'll go to 75, we'll go to 100. It's cool. Because again, the science, the verbiage, the conversations has been changing every week anyway. And again, this is not a very centralized approach as far as how the United States has responded to COVID. Every state is kind of doing what they want to do. And so we don't know what's going on, to be honest. But to be just so blatant and impulsive about something so serious when you've seen so many people pretty much literally die. And I know folks are going to say, oh, well, it is what it is. And now the vaccine's out. So, it should be all fine. It should be all balanced. But again, it's just like you're lowering the bar again. And I hate it because, again, the people who will be the most collateral to all this, of course, will be Black folks, will be the working class, will be the Latino community. It'll be populations that don't even have the same access to a lot of luxuries anyway to begin with. And so I'm looking at the governor who's already gotten his, he already got his little vaccine shot. So he's good to go. So he said, go ahead, open up everything. And again, I just see him as somebody who's playing into the political games. Like he's kind of on some foolery. And I knew he's kind of been a trash governor since he started, when he was attorney general and he had to defend the Chris Dunst guy. There was a good episode about the Chris Dunst guy. I think I'm saying his last name right. It was on American Greed, but they also did another special. It was called like Killer Doctors or something. But anyway, Chris Dunst was this guy who was supposed to be a surgeon, and he pretty much lied about a lot of the credentials he had. And so he was, performing operations and constructive surgeries and everything on different patients. And he kept botching the surgeries and killing patients. And so there was a total of about 30 patients who were either killed or seriously injured by his surgeries. And there was like one surgery where he cut into somebody's back and just started pulling out tissue and everything. And that person pretty much became paralyzed. And, so of course, there's all these different lawsuits and everything. And so while he was attorney general, at the same time, he was also caping and pushing for, the lawsuit cap when it comes to malpractice suits. And he wanted the cap to be at like 250,000. It was already a law that was pretty much being put in the legislation, but he was somebody who pushed and backed it. And so that was one of the main defenses he had against, the lawsuits that were going against somebody like a Chris Dunst, where he's like, oh, well, we have to protect the doctors and so on and so forth. And mind you, Chris Dunst pretty much was just malpracticing. He wasn't even taking any of the work seriously. And because there's a lot of bureaucracies and politics when it comes to, getting into a position where you can make a doctor come out of their practice or disbar them or whatever you do when you set it up where a doctor can no longer practice. There were so many loopholes and hurdles that people had to go over. So this guy just kept getting pushed from hospital to hospital and kept doing the same damage to folks. Folks would go in for, like, one of the patients that died went in for something very routine, not even anything super, super intense. And somehow they didn't make it out to surgery. And so it took, a few years before they finally were able to kind of pull him out of there and say, absolutely not. And what I find funny about the salary cap is that, remember, he's in a wheelchair, right? He was walking and a tree branch fell on him and, paralyzed him. So he sued the homeowner of where the tree was. And he also sued the company that treats the tree, the folks that go and trim the hedges and trim the bushes and everything like that. He sued them and got $6 million. And so after he gets his money, now he's like, we're going to put a cap, when it comes to medical malpractice, just 250,000 should do. That should suffice. And so it's just a bunch of chaos. And then even when he was governor, he had 44 different lawsuits against the Obama administration. And most of those lawsuits were rooted in a lot of climate change and emissions kind of regulations. And so he's just kind of somebody who it has nothing to do with the betterment of the people. It's a political game. You know what I mean? He's playing the silly games. He's bought into the foolery. And again, this is why I say in the United States, I would love for this country to break free from the two-party system, because the two-party system has put us in a place where you're never going to get anything done, because it's always going to be an us versus them versus us, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, so on and so forth. And the actual issues are never adhered to. And so pretty much people vote in the interest of just their party, or now, as we've seen in response to how people respond to Trump, their favorite candidate. And so there's a blind loyalty to either that party or to that candidate at the expense of any and everybody. It doesn't matter what's happening, as long as that candidate or that group is in power, it is what it is. And so it's just kind of some BS there. What else did I write on here? Oh, and then, what was crazy too, with the salary caps, with the whole $250,000 cap, it was also pretty much, there was a line item in it where that's the permanent cap. There will be no adjustments for the cost of living. So as there are so many sirens outside. I don't know if y'all can hear them, but city living. But so as time progresses and as the cost of living gets higher and there's inflation, it's still going to be that $250,000 cap unless there's some kind of legislation that takes place. And so it's kind of just like, foolery. And so it's just like with a bot, I can't. And again, like I said, it's just like the collateral that you have to be to some of the decisions that are being made. Like he ignored what, the CDC was saying. He ignored what the health experts in Texas were saying. He just went ahead and did his own thing. And again, the people who will be collateral, of course, are going to be Black folks. They're going to be people who are in the working class, people who are in, the Latino community. It's going to be people who, of course, are vulnerable. And I'm over it. You know what I mean? It's just like, again, politics in the way of progress as usual. And then you're even seeing the people already start to act stupid. Like I saw somebody posted a picture of some business and the business was like, no masks allowed, no masks allowed. I'm like, see, now it's getting to a point where, if you want to go ahead and lift the mask mandate, fine, do what you do in your state. But again, people should have the right to choose whether or not they want to protect themselves. So now that you have a business and you're saying, you can't come in here with a mask, most people will be like, well, whatever, fine, I just won't come here. But you're seeing how politics play a role into common sense and how people, again, they'll throw their discernment out the window, all in the name of trying to prove a point. People will let this country go down and go under just to be right. They'll burn their own house down just to prove a point. It's kind of like, again, if you've seen Harlem Nights and it's like, he wasn't no punk, but he died young. He died young, but he wasn't no punk. Same kind of energy. And so, again, with America's response to COVID, because again, there's not a centralized approach and every state gets to kind of do what they want, I feel like we're just going to continue in this longer cycle. I do think, things are going to slowly start getting better, but we could have been so much further along a long time ago. But again, you have all the states just kind of doing whatever they want and the rules keep changing. And again, it's partisan politics. And it's funny because a lot of these main people who kept saying it was a hoax are the first ones getting the vaccine. That's the part I don't get. I'm like, y'all were first in line for the vaccine. If it's such a hoax, go ahead and be a rebel. Go ahead and stand on that rock and, go into all the businesses without a mask and lead the charge, lead by example, go to the nursing home and hang out for a little bit, go to the concerts and inhale, sing along with the, we're not gonna take it and inhale all the air. Just have a good time and see how far you get along. You know what I mean? And it sucks because the healthcare workers are the people who are also collateral to this, that entire healthcare system in Texas literally almost had the same experience as California, where it almost collapsed because everybody was overwhelmed. And we had a portion in the fall where you had, over 100,000+ people in hospital beds, where you had, some hospitals that were at capacity. People are having to get, airlifted or driven 45 minutes, 2 hours out of the way to another hospital because there's nowhere, there's no beds available. On top of the fact that other people who still have other issues now have to put their issues on the back burner. So people who had elective operations and stuff, they have to push things back. And I'm sure there were a lot of people who had to have some kind of procedure that wasn't urgent at that moment, but because time kind of slowed or, they had to keep waiting, those non-urgent needs became more urgent and became more of a problem. I'm sure there's some people who went from stage 1 to stage 2, there's a bunch of things that have happened. And so again, it's just like, I can't. And when you want to make the argument about, well, what about the business owners? What about the people who are suffering because they can't open? I fully understand. And that's where the argument is about what the government was supposed to do for the people. Had they not played all these partisan games in relation to COVID relief and passing these bills, we wouldn't be in some of the mess that we're in. But every single time there's an opportunity for some kind of progress, the politics jump in the way. And so when people put solutions on the table and let's do this and let's do that, then folks, oh no, we're not voting for that. That's absolutely not. That's the radical left doing this. That's the right doing this. That's the stupid, the same kind of foolery. And then before you know it, again, we go months and months and months. What's it been, 9 or 10 months since the last, bill passed? And so you've watched, again, just looking at what's happening with the economy. It was just reported again, this past month, 745,000 new people applying for unemployment for the very first time. It has never gotten below that since COVID first started. So we've gone 50 weeks at this point with at least 745,000 or more applying for unemployment. There was a time period where, it was in the millions. But again, you're still seeing the same cycle where people are suffering, and it's because the government decides they want to play games. They want to, even like right now with the COVID relief bill, and they're doing all the things they can do to stall, and the guy's going to read the full bill for 10 hours, and they're doing any and everything just to prove points. And again, the people become collateral. And so the people that have somewhat been elected to somehow represent the needs of the people are not even there for the needs of the people. It's for the needs of themselves, their interest groups, whoever their mega donors are that they're trying to appease. And so here we are playing these same games. And so it's the status quo. It's the same foolery. It's what you see every single time. It's just like, y'all just, man. And then that's why I was looking at Mississippi sideways, because I'm like, Mississippi, of all states, y'all have one of the worst healthcare systems in the country already. And again, when you're talking about the socioeconomic wealth of the residents in Mississippi, people in Mississippi, or a lot of the people, don't have the same luxuries to take this as lightly as some people are taking it. Because again, there's just some elements of infrastructure when you're talking about healthcare that don't exist. And again, people are going to be collateral. And it's just like, when it gets to the point where Jim Justice from West Virginia is like, wait a minute, all right, now even this is too far. And that's like some Republican governor in West Virginia. And remember, he was the same person at the beginning of the pandemic that was like, oh, it's not a big deal. Go out to eat. Go to the restaurants. Go out on a date. Have a good time. Then the numbers started kicking up. Okay, wait a minute. We spoke a little too soon, y'all. Put the masks on. It's just like, man. And again, it's because the knowledge and the science keeps changing, and there's still periods of uncertainty. It's like, why take the risk? I understand that maybe sometimes people feel like people are overreacting or they're making it bigger than what it is. It's kind of like, it's better to at least be safe than sorry. But right now, I just recognize that people just kind of lack empathy. And you've heard the same language of, well, people die all the time. People die all the time. It is what it is. It's just what happens. That's life. And I'm like, dang. And you watch people who literally have no remorse, even when it's their own family members dying. Well, they died in the name of America. I'm like, all y'all are stupid. Just stupid. And the worst part that you're going to have to worry about, if these numbers don't start to slow down, you're going to see more variants pop up. The same way California has its own variant now, you can definitely probably assume Texas will have something similar if those numbers don't start going down. And again, it's just like, and now you're trying to open the schools as well. You got Biden and crew trying to, force all the schools open and put all them teachers out there. And things have not really gotten better yet. I'm just like, this is wild. It's all wild. You know what I mean? I understand that the vaccine is out and, but even with that, that's not even been a lot of people. The percentage, I think, of Texas that has the vaccine, I think is what, 8%. And of course, there's a certain population that has that. It's mainly in addition to the older population. It's pretty much a lot of the rich folks that have been able to jump through the loopholes, kind of like what you saw in Florida. A lot of people who are friends with folks are the ones getting the vaccine first. So it's just like, it's a lot. Geez, let's take a quick break. Let me read some of the comments. I'm just like the stupidity. I'm over this crap, man. I'm so tired. Like, it's just everybody's so, I don't know. I'm at a place where I just feel like I'm smarter than everybody who's in charge, and I don't like feeling that way. You know what I mean? But like I said, that two-party system has to go. Somebody donated. I got to see who that was. I didn't get a chance to thank them. Who is this? Thank you, Old Eyes, for an old soul. This is the first time I'm off work, and then my chat will scroll. To catch your live show, love your channel and music. Okay, thank you. Let's see, I'm gonna read a few comments, then we're gonna keep going because I have 11 pages of notes to get through. I feel like this is one of our low-key chats tonight. Let's see where we're at. Somebody said it's not gonna disappear overnight. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I think that ties into the fact that, again, the language keeps changing every week. It's just, it's a headache, And again, if the government would have done what it needed to do to ensure that these businesses weren't struggling and that they would have been able to support, just like we've seen other countries do, and we know that we know that the money's there. They had no problem blowing up some stuff in Syria the other week, so clearly there's money to do stuff. It's just they want to pick and choose, what's important. And so now the people are being collateral, and even people who are voting into the foolery are being collateral, and they know that it's some foolery. They know that they are on the receiving end of the clownery, the foolery, but they, again, holding on to the power and holding on to whatever argument they want to make, and they're willing to die for this crap. Just stupid. Never been for the people. Exactly. Oh, don't worry. It's Renee. We're getting to Jackson and that water in a second. Somebody Somebody said they're going to shut down again. Tiana Weekfall. And the thing about the shutdown is really like, I don't really feel that the country's ever really shut down to begin with. I think there's been cities that have shut down or had very restricted environments. And in some of those cities, it's worked. Some places it did not. But I think because of how they were enforced, that's probably why. I know me living in DC, our numbers have never really been too terrible. Like they didn't really get crazy until you started having the Proud Boys do all the riots. And then, you know, all the protests here around like October, November, because none of them decided to wear masks. And it was interesting because you saw as they were doing all of the nationwide protests in response to what happened with George Floyd, you didn't really see the numbers really climb or skyrocket in most cities because people had masks on while they were protesting. The numbers went up slightly, but not to the extent that what you saw by the time we got to October, November, when people, you know, celebrate Halloween or Thanksgiving. And then, of course, what was going on in DC with Proud Boys showing up and having rallies and Stop the Steal marches and everything else. And you started seeing those numbers go up. It's just like people all of a sudden know more than the scientists. All because they saw an Instagram meme, you know, they saw something on Twitter that they retweeted. You know, they watched one of the people with the really bad toupees on Fox News tell them something crazy and they latched onto it. Let's see. Yes, politicians only care for themselves, Jay Waste Bills. You're absolutely right. Don Worthy said, yep, using their dying breath to say hoax. I mean, think of all the people who've died under this because they were trying to prove a point. I'm not talking about people who died because, you know, unfortunately they caught the virus and so on and so forth happened. But I'm like people who they were trying to prove a point and died. Like what a waste. Goodness. Somebody said, what do you think we can do to get it under control? I mean, the issue, too, is, again, the United States, it's funny how we pick and choose when we want to enforce stuff. But, again, when you have the conversation of states' rights, it's very hard to federally enforce something if it hasn't been approved in, you know, Congress. And I don't think you're going to get much approved in Congress because they can't even vote to give the people some money. So, you know, there's that. But I want to keep moving on. And then in relation to Jackson, you know, what's crazy with Jackson is they were hit by the same storm that hit Texas, you know, and so this is back in February, you know, February 13th. And so really the conversation about everything, because of course right now Jackson is still suffering where there's a lot of people who have no running water. And at one point it was most of the state of Mississippi. Now it's more so concentrated in Jackson. And you still have, you know, over 100,000 people without clean water. And it's a conversation as well about the infrastructure and that our infrastructure is so dated. And because, again, when we talk politics, because this is more than just what's happened in the last 2 years, but really the last 30 years, I think I said this on the last live or maybe the last in the news, but because the partisan politics has gotten so much more intense over the last 30 years, it's not an issue of really them fighting about the actual issue and finding what's the best solution. It's more so let's just see who can get over on the other person. Let's own the libs, own the conservatives. We're gonna show Nancy, we're gonna show McConnell, and it's the same kind of foolery. And so now again, the infrastructure is aging out. There was a piece I found I wanted to read to you guys if I can find it. Is this it? Okay. This is coming from the Mother Jones piece, and this is talking about just the infrastructure when you're talking about the water systems, because again, you had over like 100 different systems in the state crash and fall apart because of the freezing weather. And it's funny because this all ties into, again, conversations like white flight, and when you have, you know, a de-investment or whatever the word is, you know what I'm saying, when they stop investing in the neighborhoods once people leave. In 2018, Mother Jones Rebecca Lieber spoke with Michigan journalist Anna Clark, who trace similar crises to an urban tax base decimated by waves of white flight. Many mid-20th century white urbanites, spooked by desegregation orders, you remember that era, okay, once they started saying folks could piss in the same toilet, folks got scared, found moving to the suburbs far less scary than letting their kids share desks with Black students. Around the same time, federal investment programs started to subsidize home ownerships and the highway system, making the move more appealing than ever and driving massive disinvestment in cities that they left behind. The outcome, across the country, rings of new suburban infrastructure surrounded by crumbling power, water, and gas networks used mainly by people of color. So again, this is not just limited to a place like, you know, Jackson, Mississippi, but it's deeper than that. And then another portion, key improvements to the water system could cost $2 billion, more than 6 times the amount of Jackson's annual budget. So they don't even have it in the system to fix. So again, when this, you know, because they're going to do some patchwork to fix it, but pretty much the issue won't be fixed. So it can happen again. That's one of the issues. The That $2 billion estimate is likely correct, according to Khan, who explains that the breaks and leaks in Jackson's water supply were brought on by pipes cracking and deteriorating over long stretches of time. Fixing it would require an expensive system-wide overhaul, pipe replacements, cutting into roads, and paying for safety measures to carry it all out. What cities does that sound like? Sounds just like Flint, who's currently going through the same thing where they had the pipe restoration, right? Similar repairs weren't completed in Flint until the state and federal government set aside hundreds of millions of dollars to make them possible, and they're still in the journey of getting it done. And so it's just like, you know, you're seeing, again, things that should have been taken care of decades ago got lost in the shuffle when you talk about partisan politics. And this is why I find it so interesting when people like to talk about, okay, well, we don't like big government in our lives. It's like people have selective hearing and have selective things they want to be pressed about. So, you know, it's like no big government, no regulation, but then they have no problem doing voter suppression laws. You know, they first in line to sign up for that. You know, first in line to find something that people can't do. First in line to tell people, you know, that, you know, they're going to be the ones in charge of what, you know, women's productive or reproductive care is going to be. First in line to talk about, you know, the rights of marriage for any and everybody. First in line to talk about what happens in relation to housing discrimination or job discrimination. All that, you know, they're first in line to talk about. But then when it's something that actually deals with safety, deals with the overall progress of an entire city, deals with the overall way that a city operates. Now it's, we don't want regulation. We don't want the government in our business. Tell them they're not going to take our guns. And so, again, you've pretty much dumbed down what the real issues are and linked them to pretty much 2 or 3 talking points that has been regurgitated for decades and decades, and the people have bought into it. And now you're watching cities literally crumble. America's infrastructure right now still has a rating of a D, and it's been a D since at least 2008, at least. And that's really just when they made the study. So, you know, imagine what it is now. It hasn't been like they fixed anything. You remember that time that bridge collapsed in, was that Minneapolis? I don't know if it was in Minnesota or Michigan or Wisconsin. It was one of them states, but there was a bridge that the people used to drive over, and it collapsed like during rush hour traffic some years back, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And so again, you're watching all of these cities that are having these crumbling infrastructures, especially cities that don't have booming economies, especially cities where the people are leaving, where the, you know, the population is declining, because again, the jobs have shifted, the market has shifted. Maybe these were industrial cities, and because we're no longer in an industrial era, you know, the investment is not there, and you're seeing people leave and go to other places where they can try to build. And so you're watching the funding be pulled. You're watching cities literally crumble and fall apart. And so again, it's just interesting. And so again, when you're talking about the politics, it's just like clownery. What else did I want to add on here? Oh, let me read some comments first before I go to this next piece. Divestment. Thank you, Maverick Cruz. I was struggling to get that word out today. Can't even get the words out. Somebody said, we have crumbling, outdated infrastructure and a job crisis and a functional country. These 2 problems would solve themselves. Environmental racism, of course, definitely. Sounds like Baltimore. And you know what's interesting with Baltimore too, because Baltimore will have you confused if you don't really go to Baltimore. If you only go to the waterfront and, you know, get some crab and eat on the pier and see the nice museum, you think that like all is well, but no, there's so much. Baltimore is another one, but you know, I'm rooting for their mayor. He seems like he's really kind of about, you know, handling his business. So good luck to him. Hopefully he's able to fix some of the issues that are taking place. And again, it's bigger than just Baltimore. It's also something going on with Maryland's government as well that they'd have to kind of enhance as well, so it can actually make its way to Baltimore. But you know, the people of Baltimore are doing the best they can. By the way, when you get a chance, I don't know if it's still open at the moment because of COVID, but please support the Blacks and Wax Museum they have there. You know, they're definitely trying to stay afloat, and I've been there a few times, and they definitely want to kind of renovate and re-enhance. So when you get a chance, if you're in Baltimore and if they're open, definitely check them out. By the way, shout out to Baltimore. That's where I shot my music video. Somebody said, yes, it was Minneapolis. Thank you, Toya8169JM. When I was talking about the bridge that collapsed, literally during rush hour. And again, that didn't have to happen. But again, when you're not paying attention to the infrastructure, and again, there's been so many infrastructure bills that have supposed to have been, you know, passed, but they just kind of sit in the Senate. And when you had a certain, you know, Senate Majority Leader McConnell, who just wasn't going to vote on anything, you know, when you look at all of the bills that just sat there, we're not going to bring it to a vote, not today. It's just like, same thing with COVID relief, same kind of foolery. You know, he kept, even when we're talking about the conversation around stimulus checks, I think I have it later in my notes, but Let's shoot, I'll just talk about it now. But even when you're talking like COVID relief and all of that, and just how it was pretty much declared, okay, there needs to be another kind of stimulus boost to the economy to help people because the money has run out. People are struggling. People are on unemployment. People need all kind of different things. And then you watch them say, you know, they introduced the HEROES Act, what, in April or May? Okay, we're going to do that. That's going to be the checks to go to the people. That just sat and never went anywhere because McConnell didn't want to bring it to a vote. Then the conversation comes back again in the fall. Yeah, and even former president was like, yeah, $2,000 checks. Let's go. All right, and so great. Let's get it cranking. Okay, you know, write the bill. Get the bill out there. McConnell doesn't want to put it up for a vote. We're not going to do that right now. We're going to wait till after the election. The American people want a clean and fair election. Yeah, but you can do two things at once. You can go ahead and pass the bill so, you know, people can make sure their bills are paid or that business owners can make sure that they can stay afloat or keep their employees, you know, with a job. You know, it won't hurt too much to go ahead and pass that bill to help the people at the same time while they're trying to rebuild and help themselves out because there hasn't been that much help to begin with. People have gotten, what, a total of $1,200 in a full year when some people have been unemployed for 10 months or 11 months, when businesses have gone under, where you've had plus, 40 million people lose their jobs and all they got was $1,200, like literally. And so even right now, again, then you get Joe up in there. And like I said before, as much as I am relieved that Cuckoo Man is out of there, I've always said Joe is a business as usual candidate. And so he's still in this space where he's trying to be everybody's friend and we're going to try to extend to the right. And the right is telling y'all, F that. We ain't doing this. Nope, we're not voting for that. Same kind of foolery. And so he keeps playing into these games and they keep caving and negotiating. And you watch $2,000 drop down to $1,400. And he was like, yeah, what I meant was, it was going to be that 14. You just add to that 600. Y'all don't know how to add. And so you got that going. And like, it's just, it's chaos. And it's so funny because it was like, you saw people on the GOP side, as soon as they lost, the first thing was like, unity, we're gonna do unity. What about unity? And you've seen the unity went right out of the window once we started talking dollars. They're like, hell no, we ain't voting for that. No. And it's like, y'all should have learned from the last time. Like, stop playing with these fools. Like, they played dirty. And again, I'm not really affiliated with either party, but I do vote for what makes sense. And so, if you remember when they were pushing the Affordable Care Act, same thing happened. Barack Obama was so busy trying to be friends with everybody. And, he and I don't understand why he did this because he had a super majority. He didn't even need Republicans to get half the stuff done he could have gotten done in those first 2 years. And so when they were trying to push the Affordable Care Act, he put together a committee because, again, he was trying to do the optics and be everybody's president, just like Biden is trying to do now. And so he puts together this panel or a commission of a bipartisan, set of congressmen. So some from the GOP side, some from the Democrat side, they're going to come together and kind of review what's been introduced as far as Obamacare. And they pretty much went and started gutting and stripping. There were 200 amendments that were put into this bill. They amended 200 different elements of Obamacare before it went up to a vote. And then even after all of that, not a single Republican voted for it. So the same ones who went and chipped away at it, well, we won't vote for it unless you put this in or take that out, or no, you need to give insurance companies immunity when it comes to this. You need to do this, you need to do that. And so they kept caving. Okay, well, we'll meet you in the middle. We'll meet you in the middle. So they done met in the middle. Then it's time for the vote. GOP was like, we ain't voting for that. Nope, because again, conversation of party lines. And so then we get an Affordable Care Act, which is great, but it's not even what it could have been because they decided to cave and try to be friends with everybody who don't want to be friends. I'm like, y'all stop playing these stupid games, call a spade a spade. It is what it is. At least go ahead and be shiesty and grimy like the other side and do the same thing they do. And at the end of the day, hey, if you lose power, they can go and undo it and you just go back and forth like y'all normally do. But it's like they're suckers on this every single time. And so again, now you have the Senate struggling to pass this $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. And they decided they want to read, all 10 hours of it because they want to show the American people that it's a scam. And they don't want to give people that much, when it was talking about the child care piece. And I think we talked about that in the last news where they wanted to start giving, parents, an additional few $100s just to help them while they have kids. They don't even want people to have that. Nope. You need to cut. No, absolutely not. You had Marco Rubio saying that's welfare. We've already done the conversation of welfare, so watch my last in the news video because I don't want to go back in depth with it. But we definitely talk about the origins of that verbiage and why people who are now on welfare are so, pretty much torn down in the media or torn down in the national conversation. There's some origins behind that because that wasn't always the case. If you initially go back to the initial beginnings of something like the welfare program that was introduced after 1935, it was more so something that showcased how great America was and how they could help the people because we're so much better than the other countries. And that's how we do things. And, it's the American way. And so, once they shifted and made black folks the face of welfare, then all of a sudden it was people who were lazy and didn't know how to work. And they're just draining the system. And so that $26 that comes out of your annual taxes for something like food stamps, just it's such a hardship on your lifestyle. But, they're wasting that $26. So absolutely not. Or maybe it's $36. But, that's just one weekend at the movie theater. Anyway, the next piece I found interesting is when we're talking about the Foolery again. I don't know if you've been following the For the People Act, and that's pretty much an act that's all about what's happening in voting. So let me read just a piece of what it's supposed to be and why, again, they're playing in your face. So it's called HR 1 For the People Act. Now, this is in relation to voting. So it overhauls government ethics and campaign finance laws, okay? Creates automatic voter registration, expands access to early and absentee voting, curtails the influence of big money in politics, which I critique pretty much every time we go live when I said our politics will never be fixed until you take the money out of it. Curbs partisan gerrymandering. All of those really great things that would really make, the elections be a lot more transparent and it wouldn't be so rigged a lot of times. Because when you really think about the elections, if you go back to the election of 2016, only 36% of the population actually voted in relation to who won and so on and so forth. But you would think that, the way things are put out that everybody voted, and so, only 36% of the population actually voted for the former president. And so, but the way that it's put out, you'd be like, oh, it was a landslide. But no, there's people who weren't eligible to vote. There are people who were purged. There are people who have all kinds of different laws. And then there's some other bits in the bill. Election security. The bill contains election security provisions, including voter verified paper ballot provisions, mandating the use of paper ballots that can be marked by voters either by hand or with a ballot marking device. Campaign finance reform. There's a bunch of things in there. And the funny piece about that is this bill was introduced back in like 2018, and then it was reintroduced again in 2019. And of course, former Majority Leader McConnell just decided he wasn't going to bring it to a vote. We're just not going to vote on that. Absolutely not. No, we're not going to do it because it had already passed in the House in 2019. And so it just sat in the Senate. And then, of course, the Senate expires because now you introduced a new class. And so now you have to vote on it again. And so they reintroduced the bill on January 4th of this year. And again, it passed in the House. We'll see what happens in the Senate. But even with that, it passed along party lines because I don't think anybody shifted over to vote for it from the other side. And again, it's like, what is the threat of making sure that everybody can vote? What is the reason behind it? You know what I mean? And again, like we said, we talked about the voter disenfranchisement that would start taking place after the previous election. And the last time we did a live, I told you that there was about 160 voter suppression laws that were already popping up in different states. The tally is now up to 253. One of those bills even includes the state of Georgia, where it will be a misdemeanor if you pass out water to people who are standing in line waiting to vote. That's the American way. Goodness, it's a headache. And the worst part about it is, a lot of the issues we're running into right now when you're talking about what's happening with voter suppression would have not taken place had we not started gutting the Civil or the Voting Rights Act back in 2013, which again, this is in trial again as well. There's more provisions that they want to gut. I don't know if you saw the follow-up or the people that were following the case and how the lawyers that were representing the GOP side said pretty much, well, we can't win if we allow everybody to vote. They said it a little bit differently and tried to say it in some different terms, but they pretty much said we're at a disadvantage when everybody can vote. And so that's why they're voting and saying that, no, they need to change, and gut that piece of it as well. And when you go back to 2013 and you think about Justice Roberts, who was one of the main ones saying, well, the reason we can gut this section of the Voting Rights Act is because the racism and the issues in America has been fixed. 2013, it's all been fixed, as if we weren't talking about Trayvon Martin in 2013. It's all been fixed. And so when you're talking about the states that have been the most heavily affected by the voter suppression laws, Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, what do those three states have in common? Those are also the three states most likely to flip in the next election. So it's kind of just like, you know what I mean? It's a joke. And I think that's why it's been so hard for some of these states to have the outcomes that people may have been leaning towards. Because remember in 2016, people thought Georgia would have flipped in 2016. People thought Texas had a chance of flipping in 2016. North Carolina's kind of back and forth because they flipped in 2008, but they haven't really been able to flip back since. And so, they felt that they could, there's a chance. But again, with so many laws and so many rules and so many different things that are out there to make it difficult for people to vote, it makes it harder for the voice of the people to actually be heard. And again, this is not all about Democrat and Republican. It's just more so challenging a system where clearly you're not even giving people an opportunity to make a choice. You're trying to make the choice for them. That's the beat. You know what I mean? And so you're seeing the same foolery. Let's go to a few comments because I didn't even read them after the last break. I said I was going to read. All right. Scorpius Jones says the Democrats actually did push for 2000. You're absolutely right. Republicans voted it down. That was the initial HEROES Act. It started in 2000, and then it died off, and then Trump kind of brought up the conversation right before the election. Everybody was like, yeah, and then watch it go back down to 14, and it's a mess. Thank you for clearing that up, Scorpius Jones. Let's see. Okay, it was 2007 in Minneapolis when we talked about the bridge. Deja Curry said, all that technology and the toilet can't even flush. Mm-hmm. And I guess the bridge was called the 35W Bridge. Okay, y'all are on it. Good job, y'all. Vintage 101 said, how do you see the country in 10 years? I mean, if we stay on this same track, y'all better start saving up. You know what I mean? Say have something in your savings. I don't know where the country's going in 10 years, but we can't continue on the same track. The rest of the world is going to start passing the United States behind, even when it just comes to quality of life, because the quality of life in the United States is trash right now. It's garbage. And again, people are holding on to the idea of American exceptionalism, and it blinds people to really see the reality of what is. And so it puts people in a capacity where they don't want to critique the obvious, because they want to hold on to the notion that we're the greatest and we're the best at everything. And because of that, you're watching us just continue to fall by the wayside. And the people, again, are the collateral. And literally, if you don't already have money, if you're not rich, if you're not wealthy, then it's like, it only gets worse for you. And it's not even about a conversation of if you're working class poor, if you're living below the poverty line. Even people who believe that they're middle class, you're in the same smoke. So it's a mess. That's a good one too. Politicians are not living where they're approving these bills and then using the money elsewhere. That's the other part. A lot of these politicians don't even live in some of the neighborhoods that they represent, or even in the states, because they spend so much time in Washington as well. Crazy. Okay. Yaya H said, I'm a civil engineer. All we're doing is building houses, very little infrastructure being improved. Yeah, and you're holding on to the same formulas from, 30, 40 years ago. The Cheddar channel on YouTube, even though I think their videos are boring, but they are insightful. They talked about how America's housing infrastructure, even the way that our houses are built, they're built so cheap. And if people don't put investment back into houses after 30 years, they usually fall apart. And it's crazy because, again, if you go across over to Europe, a lot of the homes and the buildings that are built over there, they're from the 13 and 1400s and they're still standing. I remember when I lived over in Italy, or if we'd go, on a sports trip and go play a team in Germany, you just drive past, buildings that have been there for centuries, but the buildings are made out of cobblestone and so on and so forth. And the buildings are still holding up. And so again, over here, they discovered that wood was easier to work with, and you didn't have to wait for the cement and the cobblestone to do whatever it did and settle and curate and all that other stuff. And you could just do what you do with wood and, so on and so forth. And yeah, even the way that our houses are built, they're built so cheaply. One of the craziest things for those who live in the DMV, I don't know if you remember, last January or February, there was this really big fire in the Alexandria side of Fairfax County, not Alexandria City, but Alexandria once you go down Route 1. And there's this really big apartment that they were building, like one of those high-rise apartments. And so it was a wooden structure, which I think is stupid. I think it's stupid to build wooden high-rise kind of apartments that are more than like 2 floors without firewalls, because again, firewood. And so anyway, we were literally driving and the building was on fire. I was taking the kids on a field trip in the little bus, because believe it or not, I can drive the bus. And so I'm driving the kids in the little bus. And at first we just saw like some smoke kind of like billowing off in the distance. So I just thought it was like a car that was on fire. And as we got closer, it was this new apartment building that they were constructing, and it caught fire. And because the sprinkler system had not been installed yet, and it was all wood, it just and everything, right? And so finally, fast forward a year later, they're rebuilding the exact same complex, exactly how they built it the last time. I'm like, y'all didn't learn from the first time? And so it's literally the same frame, because when it caught fire the first time, it was only the frame that had pretty much been, set up, just a little wooden frame, and they had just started putting on the outsides. And now they're exactly where they were a year ago. And it's like, y'all are doing the exact same thing. You didn't learn from the last time. So, but yeah, our infrastructure is very dated. Very dated. And this is why you're seeing like the subway systems start to fail across the country. You're starting to see issues with the freeways, and you're probably annoyed because every single time you get on the freeway, there's construction and you got to move into this lane and move to the next lane and then detour here. And it's because, again, it's all these patchwork projects. We actually need some real infrastructure bills that are put out there because they will, one, create jobs, but two, kind of secure a better, I guess, outlook for when it comes to just the things that we utilize every day. You have to think the wear and tear that we put on the things that we build and how often we use things. You know what I mean? It's Renee said, is Mitch McConnell leaving? I heard something. I heard him talking about people he wants to kind of follow after him. Hopefully he leaves. Either that or let Father Time do his thing, because I'm over Mitch. I can't do it. I'm sorry. Let's see. Somebody said politicians love to play games. Vintage 101 said, mentions you keep popping up on my chat. That's why you need a third party to push. Like I said, and we've talked about it before, so I'm not going to go in depth. But like I said, until we break free from this two-party system, it's going to be the same games every single time. And then somebody said, now Biden's trying to limit eligibility. I saw that. Where I think it's if you make over $80,000, you don't need it. And again, $80,000 sounds like a lot depending on where you live. But in some of these places like a San Francisco, a DC, a New York, 80,000 is decent, but even that is still struggling. I was reading an article where it was saying like in DC, you need to at least make $106,000 as an individual to live comfortably in this city. $106,000. $106,000 to just live decent, not be wealthy and be rich, but just to be comfortable where, if something happens and you don't get paid for one pay cycle, you'll still be able to manage. You still have enough to cover your rent. You'll still have enough to cover all the expensive parking that takes place. Like DC has no parking, so parking is expensive, all of those different kind of things. Or if you don't drive and you decide to take the metro fare is so high now, it's just skyrocketed in the last few years. And I'm not even talking about during the COVID era. I'm talking about pre-COVID. And so, yeah, the cost of living here is extremely high. So depending on where you live, $80,000 isn't a lot of money. It sounds like a lot, depending on where you are, but that's not even a lot. So I don't know why they decided to add that tidbit in there. It's just like, man. And again, people who are making $80,000, they're in a different tax bracket, so they have to pay a little bit more in taxes anyway. So it's like balanced out the system. Don't do that to people, because there's people who are making $80,000 and they're still struggling to pay stuff off. They still got them college loans to pay. They still got, family members that they're taking care of or whatever else they got going. Somebody said it won't survive in the Senate. They'll filibuster it. And they need to get rid of the filibuster as well. It's like they'll do any and everything to slow progress. I'm like, y'all really put people in office and they make, 6 figures to sit there and do nothing. They literally sit there and do nothing. They'll do all the media trails and talk about all the things they're going to do and how they're fighting for this, but then they still don't get anything done. They go on recess for most of the year. They work 3 months out of the year, 3 months. And then they're the main ones talking about, Americans need to work harder, or we're not sacrificing enough. And they're not doing anything. Every single time you turn around, they're on vacation. Every single time you need them to do something, they're on the plane. They're getting up out of town when it's time to vote on something important. L.A. Proctor says, America tries hard to be better than everyone in terms of politics, forgetting its founding fathers are Europeans, mostly British, who have all been at it for thousands of years and years. Again, same foolery. And people are starting to recognize it. I think that's one of the greatest things that happen in relation to social media. Things can be exposed now, and it can be exposed, and the message can spread a lot faster. What's going on, Torre? God, I still got so many pages to get through. Dang it, the scroll keeps jumping up. I'm trying to get through a few more of these before I go to my next topic, because I feel like I'm ignoring you guys in the chat. Somebody said, sadly, I don't think that's the average family income in DC. It's not. And the issue when you start talking about average incomes is, I feel like when they make these kind of revelations or studies, I feel like there has to be some kind of line item in the study that shows the threshold and the difference between those who are very wealthy and everybody else. Because sometimes those who are so wealthy, they make so much that they bring up the average, salary of everybody else just based on the sample size. And really, it's not reflective of the people. And so it may say, oh, this city's average salary is $50,000. But no, really, it's like 36. But you have so many people who are making over $1 million. And it's only a small sample size. But because they make so much, it impacts the study. And now it looks like people are making more than they really are. So, yeah. And pretty much every place in the country, even Atlanta's expensive now. I'm like, dang, Atlanta, Texas, y'all are next. So get ready. I heard Houston and Dallas prices are starting to go up. They need to do something about that flooding in Houston as well, because it's about to be flood season. Somebody, SF said, the government limiting the income level is not even saving them much money. They're not, and I never want to hear any conversations about saving money. At this point, the deficit, it is what it is. It's just going to be that forever, and it's not like it's really ever going to have a negative effect at this point, because it would have happened by now. It's a joke. They'll spend money on everything, and really, it's already, the research has shown, if you spend the money to invest in the things that need to be invested in, it can definitely make a better trajectory for the country in the next 20 years. Even when it comes to the elements of racism, racism has cost this country a lot of money. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, and even again, when you talk about women's rights in the workplace and not paying women a fair wage, and conversations around childcare, like all of these different things that you can invest in will definitely help the country in the long run. But again, people want to stay in the now. You elect all these people who are one step from the casket. No disrespect to those who are older, but you elect people who won't even be here to see the outcomes of their decisions. And they don't care either. That's why they can do whatever they want, because they won't be here in 5 years anyway. McConnell won't be here in 5 years. He could care less. I'm not trying to kill the man off, but clearly that's the reality for a lot of these people. Or like Feinstein in California, still possibly thinking about running. I'm like, you will be 84 or 85. No disrespect, kudos and much power to all of you who've done what you did in your heyday, but you got to let the lanes open for new people to come in and bring something new to the table, because there's that generational divide where there is a disconnect. And some of these people have been rich for so long, they can't relate to the average person anymore, which is why, again, like when we talked about those tax cuts of 2017, people in Congress thought that you could renovate your kitchen on $1,200 or $1,500. All right. Somebody said I killed him with the one step from the casket. That's my line. I love saying that. I need to stop saying that, though. I don't want older people to think that I'm ageist or anything, but it's just, All right. Oh, another one. And then, of course, I don't know if you've seen the George Floyd Justice and Policy Act of 2021. Let me go back to the bill. Again, this is another one in policing reform and just making sure things are different. So some of the bits that would be in this bill, and it passed in the House already. Now, no Republicans voted for it. And one Republican did vote for it, Lance Godin, but then he realized he made a mistake. Just so you know, he represents East Dallas. So East Dallas, that's y'all boy. Just give him a heads up. That's who y'all got representing y'all. But some of the bits that would have gone in this bill, it works to end racial and religious profiling. I don't know how they're gonna do it, but we'll find out. Saves lives by banning chokeholds and also no-knock warrants. Remember, the no-knock warrant is why Breonna Taylor is no longer here. The chokehold is why somebody like an Eric Garner is not here. Limits military equipment on American streets and requires body cameras. Now, the piece with the body cameras is kind of like they're already wearing them. They still do the same foolery anyway. So that part, it is what it is. They don't care. But as far as the military equipment, again, Ferguson was the most interesting thing to watch. One of the poorest cities in the state had some of the most state-of-the-art technology when it came to shooting protesters. You know what I mean? Tanks and all kind of robots and gadgets. And I don't know if you've seen, I think in New York now they have the robotic dogs that are walking. I'm like, y'all got money for everything but what the people need. You know what I mean? I'm not even going to talk about the budget increase that U.S. Capitol Police has requested in regards to what they have. I'm like, listen, no disrespect. We saw what happened on January 6th. I'll just say this. When it comes to schools, you guys defund and punish schools when they underperform, but you reward police departments when they do the same thing and give them more funding. That's all I'm saying. Let's see. Hold police accountable in court, investigate police misconduct, empower communities to reimagine public safety in an equitable and just way. What else? Investigate. Oh, I saw that one. Change the culture of law enforcement with training and build integrity and trust. Now that's some bull crap. If they racist, they racist. It don't matter what kind of training is going to be there. It's going to be what it is. Improve transparency by collecting data on police misconduct and use of force. What needs to happen is there's not a national database of police misconduct. It's limited to whatever happens in each state or in each county. And until you have a national database, you're going to continue to have situations where you have a police officer who does something in one town and maybe they get put on administrative leave. So they leave, they go to another city or another state and they get right back on the force. They might get promoted and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of police who have been able to bounce from city to city and continue killing people or beating up folks or, being overly violent and aggressive for no reason. And there's no punitive anything because all they got to do is hop to another city because there's no database to measure that. Yeah, I mean, you got a fingerprint database, so why you can't have a database of the police that are, the misconduct? Because I feel like with policing, because the system is already screwed up, it's screwed up. But the other issue is that they're not making enough of an example out of the people who are doing wrong, and that's why you still have that whole little blue code or whatever they got going, because they all know they're gonna be all right. Stop sexual assault while in law enforcement custody. That's another issue. A lot of people being sexually assaulted once they're in police custody. Tons of cases around that. And again, it's interesting that, all of that should be just a no nonsense kind of bill that people say, okay, yeah, let's not lock that in. And of course, or let's lock that in. And of course, again, partisan divide. No, we're not voting for that. No, and then they switch the narrative and, oh, no, we support our police and Blue Lives Matter and everything else. And again, it's because those criminals are just being criminals. We don't need a law for that. They need to just stop being criminals. And so it's just, again, that same kind of clownery. So it's interesting. I was looking at Lance Golden, whatever his last name is, in Dallas. I was like, wow. And I don't know if you guys, speaking of Dallas, I was watching BET has that show Disrupt and Dismantle, which actually surprised me. It's actually fairly good. I would suggest you actually check it out. If you get a chance, it just talks about things happening in the United States that are unjust. And they were talking about environmental racism, which I think somebody talked about earlier in the chat. And they were talking about how there's a neighborhood in Dallas where the people are subject to the pollutants that are in the air. And so pretty much the scaffolding that people put on their homes, there's like this big giant scaffolding mound that's like 30 feet tall and has been there. And these companies are dumping a lot of their waste pretty much into people's neighborhood, and the people are getting sick and nothing can be done about it because there's all kind of laws. And it's funny because it ties right back to redlining and the element of just the fact that, when you were making these ordinances, when you're making these covenants, when you're making these articles back in the 30s, 40s, the 20s, and the 50s about where people could live, they made it so in those red districts where Black people live, the factories can open there. You can have industrial stuff here, but you can't have the industrial stuff in the green and the blue areas. That's where, where white people were allowed to live and Black folks weren't allowed to even be in proximity near. And so you see the discrepancies where there's some neighborhoods that, it's green space, lovely homes, a lake, a pond, the schools are all nice, all the buildings are all nice and fancy. And then there's other sections where, you have a house and right next to the house is a whole factory. Right next to the house is a whole junkyard. And so the study was saying that, in South Dallas, people have a 15-year shorter life expectancy than people in other parts of town, just based on the toxins that are in the air and the toxins that are in the water. And that's not just Dallas. You're seeing that across cities all over America. And so again, it's interesting. And then even when we talk about redlining, I think one of the things people forget about as well, because folks are always like, well, why can't you just move? Why don't you just move? I wonder if we ever think about the property values of homes that are in red line districts, especially in the past, when you talk about the 50s, 60s, 70s, early 80s, and how, homes were already deemed less valuable just because they were in that red line district, and how that plays a role into conversations around generational wealth. And so you can literally have the exact same house. Let's just say you have a simple 3-bedroom house, 2 bathrooms, 1,500 to 1,800 square feet, and a decent sized yard. You can have that same house in a red line district and that same house in a green section, and they'll be worth 2 totally different prices just because of the color they're associated with when it comes to the district that they were allowed to be constructed in. Like, those are things to also think about. That's why when people are always like, oh, racism is over, or Justice Roberts talking about, we can gut the Voting Rights Act because racism has been solved. No, it hasn't. We're living right in the remnants of it. And we're living in also the active new waves that keep coming in and taking place. So just interesting, you know what I mean? And so it's a joke. And then even when you're talking housing, and just rules, and the fact that when we're talking about these elections and when you're talking about those who are in positions of power, I feel that the GOP has such a strong hold on everything. And again, this is not to be Democrat, Republican. Like I said, all of them get on my nerves. But I look at America's setup just like a house, to be honest. Like, I think if you take a house, we're going to jump into one of my metaphors. I love to do a metaphor. If you just take a random house, right? Let's just say that house represents America. On the outside of the house, like, how nice the house looks in the outside and the windows and the framing and maybe the roof and the chimney, all of that represents, what you see in the face of politics. That represents the president, the governors, the Senate, the House. It represents all that. But then you have to really think about the inside. So even something like the frame, the contents that go inside the material that's used just to make the frame of, not even the frame, I'm sorry, the foundation of the house, all the contents that goes into making that cement, everything from the little cement particles and the water and the stuff that's stirred, all of that would represent some of the local, positions that are electable, even the contents that are used in the drywall, or used in the carpet or used in the wiring or the water pipes. Like all of that represents some element of the government. And what's happened is because there's been so much gerrymandering, there's been so many elements of voter suppression, there's been so many things that have been changed and restructured. And it's like the GOP just has a stronghold on everything. So even when, you know, Democrats have the House and the Senate and the White House, they still can't even get half the stuff they want to get done once you start getting to the state and local levels, because a lot of these states have a full Republican House or state house, and you know they can vote on whatever they want to do. Because again, look at what's happening in Georgia. The fact that they voted yes on some of these voter suppression bills, and the fact that yes, you go ahead and pass, you know, the wonderful person who has asthma, who's standing out in 80-degree weather for 4 hours trying to vote, you pass them some water, and now you just might go to jail. Foolery. All right. Let's see. I got to read a few comments here. I feel like this is such a dark live. I can't even have any happy. We'll get to the happy topics in a minute. I gotta get through the heavy stuff. All right. Thank you, Ambria Ashley. I learned so much whenever I listen to you. Thank you. Anybody else who donated, thank you. I might have missed it while I was talking. Lil Sabin says we have the same problem in Canada. If you build something that lasts forever, people won't have jobs. That's a conversation around capitalism as well. I think that's one of the things that happens in healthcare as well. I feel like there's a few cures to a few things, but you know, it's more profitable to just make sure you only treat the issue as opposed to curing it. Chris Taylor said, "Am I too late?" No, you're not. We still probably got another hour and a half to go. Raywin Harris, Calvin, it's the 35th anniversary of the Control album. Yeah, we'll get to Janet towards the end. I did want to talk about the documentary piece. The DMV is not cheap. That's the one thing I don't like about it. Yeah, I love this city so much, but God, it's expensive. It is so expensive. It's hard sometimes, to be honest. Let's see. Oh, this is a good part, Kate Maverick, because construction is increasing automation anyway. It's not going to create the same jobs in the future. Okay, that's a way to look at it if we're talking about infrastructure. That's a very good way to look at it. So it's kind of like, I think that's going to be another conversation too. Like when it starts getting to that point where you have so much automation and it really starts taking jobs, but you're not at a threshold where you can eliminate jobs and have automation do everything, and people kind of, I don't know, just live on like well, that sounds so socialist. People gonna get scared of that. Live on, I guess, some kind of setup where, I don't know how you would do that, but that's going to be a conversation to have when you're talking about a lot of lower wage jobs that are going into automation. Just think about how most grocery stores now, you probably have just as many self-checkout lanes as you do those who actually ring up everything. You know what I mean? And so that is an interesting point. That's something to kind of think about for like the next 20 years. I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks for sharing that, Maverick, because thank you, Marlon Harrison. Somebody said, I love that show. So Soledad O'Brien. The past episode was crazy about what's going on with the Gullah Island. Oh, yeah. That when I was talking about what's it? Dismantle and whatever show was called. I forgot what it's called. The one on BET, Disrupt and Dismantle. That's a good episode too, talking about those in the Gullah Geechee region, which is like right around like Hilton Head, Savannah, Georgia, South Carolina, and just talking about how you had all these families that inherited land. You know, they bought the land and it was inherited after the person died. Like, and I think the family highlighted there was a guy, he bought the land in 1919. It was like 32 acres of land, and you know the families were staying on it. But as he passed on, because he didn't leave a will, it was like an automatic heir to the family. But there were rules with how they could, you know, manage the land. So they weren't allowed to have a mortgage on the land, so they couldn't build homes. But you could set up a mobile home there, and even something like if there was a natural disaster, and you know South Carolina gets hit by hurricanes all the time, they don't get FEMA money, and so people have to be tasked with fixing their own homes. But long story short, the episode is highlighting pretty much how they're pretty much trying to take the land from the people, because the land is now worth like $23 million. When the guy bought it, he bought it for like 2 payments of like $180. And now it's worth, you know, $20-30 million. And so people, of course, are fighting for that land, and it's prime real estate. It's on the coastline, fishing industry, all that. They want it. And so they're doing any and everything they can to start taking the land from these people. Absolutely crazy. But again, that's where we are. Let's see. Okay, Jay Jones, look at you knowing what I'm talking about. He said he's right about that apartment fire in Alexandria, Virginia. The apartment in Kings Gardens, that's that we're facing the building. Wait, I'm sorry. Where's my glasses? Gosh, going through it tonight. Okay, He's right about that apartment fire in Alexandria, Virginia. The apartments in Kings Gardens that were facing those burning apartments. Windows exploded or burnt people's furniture. Imagine. Oh, yeah, yeah. Because the other thing was that there were apartments near that big building that was on fire. And so like the heat was so hot, it was like tearing up the people that lived in the complex next door. Because even when we were next to the fire, I'll have to, in my next video, I'll upload with you guys the video I have, because I have it on my phone, but I don't think, yeah, you guys wouldn't be able to see it. But we were on Route 1. You know, there's the traffic going one way. We're across the median on the other side and in the middle lane, and you could feel the heat from the fire still hitting the bus. And then we're stuck there because all the fire trucks. And I'm like, yo, well, we got to blow up in this mess. I was like, okay, we got to move it, y'all. But like that crap was scary. Anyway, let's keep it moving. Faith First said term and age limits. I definitely agree with term limits. I'm not even 100% against older people being in power, but it's just, if you're going to be in power at that age, understand the plight of the people. I still think there's a lot you can learn from older people that are, you know, in these positions. But the problem is a lot of these people get in positions and they've been there for so long and they don't do anything, or they get comfortable and they're complacent. And it's just like, you know, they're just out of touch. And you're watching an entire generation that can't relate to the majority of the population make all the decisions and rules for that population. I think that's the issue. What's up, James Hudson? Let's keep it moving, y'all. I got to get through these topics. Chauncey said it's all a joke. I agree. Takesha Busby, what's up? Okay, I want to keep going. Oh, I still didn't even finish this talk. Well, just to wrap up what I was saying, and when we're tying into the voter suppression as well, I think what you're seeing now in response is a lot of people, it's no secret that what happened in Georgia was not supposed to happen. Nobody thought that, you know, things would flip. Nobody thought they would go blue. Nobody thought they would take the Senate. And I think one of the reasons why you're seeing a state like Georgia introduce so much, you know, legislation that makes it harder to vote is they're trying to take back that Senate. Because, you know, Warnock is up for re-election next year because he's filling in for a position that was already, you know, short term. He's filling in for, I think, somebody that resigned or retired or something like that. And so, you know, he has to run for re-election next year, and then that would be his 6-year term. And so they're going to do any and everything to take that majority away from the other side, because then they can continue and do what they've been doing. And so, you know, that's going to be a very close race to watch. So those in Georgia, buckle up. That's all I'm saying. And again, like, and that's why you're seeing the reactions. That's why we saw what happened in January 6th. People were mad and tried to say, oh no, the election was rigged. And so not only is the election rigged, but we're going to storm the Capitol. And again, there were fears today in DC. People thought because it was March 4th, people might come in and try to blow up the Capitol or attack, you know, Democrat lawmakers. And so they didn't even have their session in the House today. And, you know, all kind of crazy things happening. Like, politics are crazy in this country. Next thing I want to jump into, this is for my DC people. If you remember, I've done this topic twice. The first time I did it, it was because it kind of got national attention, but there was a story where, you know, in DC, go-go is a very popular music genre, right? You know, it's pretty much the sound of the city. If you're not from DC, you're going to learn about go-go once you get here. And so there was like a location on the corner of Florida Avenue and Georgia Avenue that has always played go-go music, you know, loudly too. Like I remember when I first moved to DC in 06, one of the first things I remember as we were coming down Georgia Ave to go to campus, I remember hearing the loud go-go music from the building on the corner while I was going to the dorm. And me, I thought it was the coolest thing because I had never lived in a metropolitan city before. I always lived in like some farm town. So this was just exciting to me. But, you know, that's become a staple of the city. And so you saw they start gentrifying the area. They build this big giant apartment complex called the Shea. And then some guy who lives in the Shea was so pissed off about the noise coming from where they play the go-go music on the corner every day that he went and, you know, he went to complain, and they pretty much told him, you know, kick rocks, it is what it is. So he went to the corporate company, because T-Mobile is like the corporate company of that business that's there. And T-Mobile ordered them to turn the music off for the first time in like 30 years. You know, some random guy that just like, you know, I can't stand it. And then he's on the news and he's like, you know, I don't mind the music, but it hurts my ears when I walk past it. And mind you, like the building is not even by him. Like, it's like you have the building on the corner, you have Georgia Avenue, then there's a CVS, then there's the Shea way back on the other side. But the thing about the Shea is on the other side of the Shea is all of the nightlife of U Street. So you have all these nightclubs and everything else, but somehow none of that noise bothered him. But it was the noise or the go-go music playing from the building on the corner across the street and down the street. So, you know, they did all that. And that pretty much pushed the whole don't mute Don't Mute DC movement, right? And like they had a whole thing called like Mochella, which is kind of just like a celebration of like go-go music and black music in DC. And so you had that happen. And then there was a bill that was introduced maybe 2 years ago that was pretty much introduced to limit the amount of noise that street performers make. If you go to Gallery Place or / Chinatown, that's one of the areas where you're always going to hear the kids like hitting on the bucket, hitting on the buckets, or there might be somebody, out on the street dancing and they got the music and stuff going. It's just a hot spot because it's like a cultural, hot spot in the city. And so they introduced legislation to limit the amount of noise that can come from that area, because a lot of the new residents that moved into the city that weren't initially from here to begin with started complaining about the noise. And so that also played a role into the whole idea of like Don't Mute DC or Don't Mute Go-Go or Mochella. And so the bill got pushed out. So here we are again, and the bill's being reintroduced. Anita Bonds, who I'm side-eyeing because she's been a councilman in DC for the longest. I think she's either at large or Ward 8, I can't remember. And then there's Councilman, Mellons? What's his name? Mendelson, and then Brooke Pinto. Those are the three that are introducing the legislation. And again, it's to limit the amount of noise or music coming from these institutions, limiting how much noise street performers can make. And the thing is this, for the people that keep complaining about the noise, you already recognize where you're moving to. It's not like when you went to go check out that apartment or whatever, it was silent on the street. You knew you heard them drums and that music when you moved there. And so it's like, if you're going to move to a place, just like I said when I started firing up that Austin Chain guy, just like if you move to another country, your job is to understand the plight of the people of that country and respect their experience, and don't try to go in there changing stuff to make it fit what makes you comfortable. It's the same thing when you move to a city or to a neighborhood. You respect what's already there. If it's something you don't like, then maybe that's not the neighborhood for you to move to. But for you to go into the cultural epicenters of the city where things just happen all the time, and because you can't stand the noise, you want everything to be shut down so you can sleep at night. Don't move there. Like, and I think for people like going to a place like Gallery Place and hearing that's just almost become, reflex. One of my favorite things about waiting in line for a concert at Capital One Arena was, watching the people. Either there's a whole go-go band set up at the end of the escalators coming out of the subway, and they're over there just cranking and jamming, or some kids hitting some buckets, or somebody dancing, or somebody doing some flips and some stalls. And, you're standing in this long line waiting to get in your concert, but you're also being entertained at the same time. You know what I mean? It's just, that's one of the elements that comes with the city. Or hearing the street singers just sing on U Street. Like, don't come and suck the life out of the city. That's the beef I have with a lot of gentrifiers. They come into the areas in which they're not, native to, and then they want to change everything. I'm not a native Washingtonian, at least of DC, but you know what? When I moved here, I embraced everything I saw because I thought it was all the coolest things ever. And then I was like, I want to be a part of it too. Like, I feel like if you're going to move somewhere that's not native to, where you're initially from, don't come in here trying to change up stuff to make it fit for you. If that's the case, go on back to Iowa or Nebraska or North Dakota or wherever, or go somewhere quieter. You know what I mean? And so you're watching the life get sucked out of all of these cities. Did you guys see, I saw it on Twitter. It's like this poster in Harlem, or it's a poster for some business in Harlem. But then when you look at the poster, it's like nothing but white people out there just dining and eating. I said, what part of Harlem is that? But again, Harlem has been so gentrified. You're watching Brooklyn get gentrified as well. It's just like, man. And so it's, people love the idea and the suspense of being in the city. They think it's so cool. Like, remember in Brooklyn when they were doing tours of the hood, and and this is the wall where you can actually see bullet holes, and people thought that crap was so cool, and then they want to move in, and then they want to start changing stuff. It's just like, these are people's lives. Because a lot of the people who move into some of these cities that they're not native to, they're only there for a job and they're going to leave. Because there's also research that's showing a lot of the people who have even moved into DC and helped to gentrify DC, their kids aren't going to school in DC. Their kids aren't contributing to the culture of that neighborhood or anything. Their kids are going to private schools in Virginia and Maryland, or their kids are going to some private schools in DC that are not a part of the DC public school system, or even a charter system. You know what I mean? Or not even some of the magnet schools. And so they're selectively being a part of the city when it benefits them, but the other elements of the city they want no parts of. You know what I mean? It's just absolutely chaotic. And so you're seeing people just in the way. I think when it comes to DC high schools, I think the high schools population, I think of white students is like 9%. I think it might be less than that. That might be really high. But the white population in DC is not 9%. Okay, I think it's at like 48% now. So clearly, you're seeing a discrepancy. So it's kind of just like, you're sucking the culture out of cities to make it fit for you. And then they leave. Eventually, when they start their families and everything, they go on back to wherever they're going to go because they recognize, okay, the city's a little too wild for me. I want to move out. After they've sucked the life out of the city, after they've, torn down and fought to close all the cultural establishments so that they could build a freaking yoga gym. You know what I mean? or build extra franchises. Okay, here's another CVS. What I found so funny, I was on Route 1 back in the Fairfax County side of Alexandria, and I saw this building that they kept building. I was like, oh, this looks like it's going to be a restaurant. This is not too far from my job. I'm about to have something to eat. All right. I went over there the other day. It's a Bank of America. I'm like, how many of these y'all going to build, man? Dang. Like, goodness. I'm over it. It's crazy. Anyway, let's see. Let's read a few comments here. Bank of America. Y'all got one of those on every corner, and then y'all charge people $12 to have an account. Don't have an account with less than $200 in it because they'll stay snatching your little money out. She said no notification and you've been on for 70 minutes. I don't know what YouTube is doing. And then even I've made an effort now to, like, when I go live, in addition to making the announcement on the community tab, I'll go ahead and launch the video a few hours beforehand, just so people have a head start or a heads up about it. So I don't know, just make sure you hit the notification bell on my channel. But again, me and YouTube have kind of been beefing ever since my Kyle Rittenhouse video. So I don't know. Joel Patrick 1775. I don't even know who that is. I'm sorry. Sincere Washington, or maybe I've seen the story, but I'm not familiar. We need more grassroots and community organizing. Exactly. I've been saying that. Let's see. Thank you, Leslie Fountain Williams. So why did he move to the area? Again, people love the idea of being exclusive, or, what's happening is in a lot of these jumping areas, these are also some of the most expensive sections of town. People want to feel exclusive, so they go and they spend all this money to go into one of these little box paper high rises. And then, they want to feel super, super, wealthy or whatever, but then they want to still, I was about to cuss, S-word on the actual people of the area. Like, I just feel like if you're going to move into an area, just like, dang, just respect the plight of the people that are there. Dang. Jeez, people do too much. Oh, that's like the guy. Remember the guy that was pissed because, the Howard students told him to stop walking his dogs on the campus and letting them poop on the yard. And then he said this whole thing about, well, if you're not going to be a part of the community, then move the campus. I said, you're going to move a campus that's been there since the 1800s because you. And the funny part is he had a dog park by his house. There was a dog park by his house. And again, like Howard University's campus is not a cut-through campus. It's not like you cut through Howard to get anywhere. If you're going to Howard, you're going to Howard because that's the only thing that's there. There's nothing to cut through Howard to get to. When you go to Howard, you go to Howard. So it's like, no, you're making an effort to go up there and let your dog poop on the yard. And the reason why people felt some kind of way is like, this is the yard where you've had people like Thurgood Marshall or Felicia Rashad or Lane Locke and all these different people walking. And, there's a legacy and a richness there. And for you to come up here with your little dog and let them poop on the yard, it's kind of like disrespectful. So people feel some kind of way. And again, you have places that you can go and do that with your dog. It's not like your dog, there was an emergency, they had to let loose. You took your dog there to relieve themselves on the yard. So yeah, people are going to feel some kind of way. And then you go on the news talking about move to campus. Okay. Anyway, somebody said colonizers gonna colonize. That's how I swear. And life doesn't have to be this difficult. It really doesn't. But folks just make it difficult for no reason. For no reason. Goodness. All right, I want to keep it moving. What's up, the Real Revolution? I don't know if you recognize, I shouted you out in my last shout out video too, by the way, the Real Revolution. And those who kept asking about the shout out video, it's coming. I just had to finish doing my edits and everything. Like I said, I try to give every person that I shout out at least a good 2 or 3 minutes of shouting out. And I actually still go and look at everything that they sent me in the email. So, I actually try to do a decent job to make sure everybody gets their shine. It's not just me brushing over some topics real quick to get the video out. So it's coming. All right. Oh, back to these stimulus checks. And then this piece that I saw with Mitch McConnell again, who was saying that one of the concerns he has about people getting these $1,400 checks is that he feels it's going to make people not want to work. And here we go again with this conversation of people not working, right? That same narrative of, oh, the people that if you give them a handout, they won't work hard. And so he's buying into that same foolery as if he's done any work for the last 12 years. But here we go again. And so it's the same, it's just the same nonsense. What did I write here? I don't even know what that said. Handwriting just all over the mess. It's like the belief. It's the belief that I guess people get comfortable if they get some additional help. And again, with just being out of touch, it's just like, you got to be kidding me. And then because I just saw this study that came out of Stockton, California, I don't know if you've seen it, but they did a study with 125 residents where for 2 years they gave these 125 residents $500 every either 2 weeks or every month, right? And these were working class Americans. And so the assumption that people always have is people who don't have a lot, they don't have financial literacy. That's why I get annoyed anytime I get invited to some kind of financial literacy, anything. I'm like, listen, people understand how to save money, but the problem is people just don't have money to save. That's the real conversation. So even like with my community center, there's always somebody that reaches out, oh, I would love to run a financial literacy symposium at your site. Or it's either that or I'd love to run a cooking class at your site and just show them how to eat healthy. I'm like, why do y'all think just because people don't have money, they don't know how to do anything? Like, what world do y'all live in? To be honest, people who don't have money are the ones who know how to do everything, because they have to make do with what they have. They know how to stretch a dollar. They know how to make stuff work. All right. And so it's kind of like, get real. But again, they do this research and it shows that the majority of the people, like what they ended up spending the money on was getting themselves out of debt. They spent it on bills. It helped a lot of people to even get jobs because now they had a little bit more flexibility and they could take the time to go and search for a full-time job as opposed to working part-time. Let me read a piece of it because I want to share it. Okay, so it was $500. So the real world experiment in one U.S. city gave 125 people $500 per month with no rules on how to spend it. After getting $500 per month for 2 years with no rules on how to spend it, 125 people in California paid off debt, got full-time jobs, and reported lower rates of anxiety and depression, according to a study released on Wednesday. The program in Northern California was the highest profile experiment in the U.S. of a universal base income, where everyone gets a guaranteed amount per month for free. Announced by former Mayor Michael Tubbs with a great fanfare in 2017, the idea quickly gained momentum once it became a major part of Andrew Yang's 2020 campaign for president. When the program started in February of 2019, 28% of the people slated to get free money had full-time jobs. 1 year later, 40% of those people had full-time jobs. A control group of people who did not get the money saw a 5% percentage point increase in full-time employment over that same period. These numbers were incredible. I hardly believed them myself, said Stacia West, an assistant professor at the University of Tennessee who analyzed the data along with Amy Castro Baker, an assistant professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Tomas Vargas said the extra $500 a month was enough for him to take time off from his part-time job to find full-time work that paid better. He said he was depressed at the start of 2019, but now is even happier and healthier. Every day I wake up and enjoy my kids, he said. My wife, we enjoy time together. We didn't have that before. And see, that goes back to what I'm saying is there's this assumption that if you help people, it's because they're lazy and they're not going to help themselves. People know how to pull themselves out of situations. Like, that's one of the things I always want people to not get confused about when I spend a lot of time talking race. Because I think people assume that when I start talking the structural atrocities in relation to race and generational wealth and redlining and all that, people think that I'm just complaining and saying that black people collectively just, we're never going to be able to amount to anything or do anything. That's not the argument. The argument is we're on our journey to do everything we so desire to do. But in that journey, in that process, these are the hurdles that we're running into. But in spite of running into those hurdles, we're still going to get what it is that we need to do. So don't judge us on our journey when that's not your experience. That's the real conversation. There's like a million police outside, but okay. All right. I have something to watch once I'm done with this. And so again, you know, that's the language that's there. And so it's just like you keep seeing the same kind of foolery where they want to vilify people who don't have as much and assume that they don't know what they're doing, assume that they're lazy. You're seeing that same conversation even when we're talking about, you know, college loan forgiveness. And again, it's no secret that kids who are going to college now are paying 3, 4, sometimes 5 as much as people paid just 40, 50 years ago. Like I said, even tuition into Howard has doubled since I came out back in 2010. Like, I finished in 2010 and the tuition is twice that of what I paid when I had to go. And so the vilify people who are, you know, trying to build themselves up, and people say, well, you signed that loan. Well, yeah, I don't know if you've ever been to a college campus, but the first thing you do when you get there, you see all of these, or even a college fair, or even if there's some kind of event for people who just got into some of these schools, you see all these, what I say, the loan sharks show up, convince these 17 and 18-year-olds, yeah, go ahead and sign this loan at an interest rate of 9%. You know, but don't worry, because when you get out and when you get that bachelor's, you're going to be able to just get the best job in the world. You know, you're going to get this psychology degree with a bachelor's. We're not going to tell you that you're not going to be able to do much with the psychology degree until you go and get additional schooling, but, you know, go for it. You're going to be rich. And so you get these kids that sadly spend, you know, they take out these crazy massive loans because there's been a promise that's been told to them that if they get that piece of paper, here comes prosperity. And the prosperity will come depending on people's experience, but a lot of people have been sold a dream, unfortunately. And then when you're looking at the interest rates that some people have, and when you're looking at the fact that some of these loans are pretty much one step from illegal with how they're set up. And mind you, when we're talking about loan forgiveness, that's just the federal loans. That's, that doesn't apply to these private loans that people are getting. The people are on their own in that realm. And so again, you're watching people struggle who now, you go to a 4-year institution and you got $160,000 worth of debt for a liberal arts degree. It's just like, it's chaos. You know what I mean? And I always side-eye people who come from an earlier era. Well, when I was in school, I worked at Wendy's. Yeah, because tuition was $2,100 a year. Yeah, so yeah, you could flip some burgers and you'd have enough to pay your tuition and room and board and still have food to eat and still hang out with your friends. That's $2,100 is not even, I don't think, room and board for most schools at this point, especially if it's not a state school. You know what I mean? And in addition to that, and somebody just said it in chat, thank you, Dangerous Curves, it's called predatory lending. In addition to that, when you've seen the previous administration cut so much of the funding that goes into Pell Grants to help people, people are really trying to pull themselves out of a tough situation by getting educated, because that's what we were told to do. We were told to go to school and better ourselves and the opportunities would come. And so people have done that, and people are in all kind of debt, and there's not even any empathy. There's not any consideration for the fact that, the loan sharks have come and taken advantage of so many people. And it's just like, it is what it is. There's people who literally have $200,000 and $300,000 worth of debt because they had to continue their education in order to work in the field that they wanted to work in. And so there's clearly a discrepancy when it comes to the college experience. That's not everybody's experience. Some people are fortunate they get the full ride, or they go to a state school that may be a little bit more affordable and they get a really good deal with loans. But there's a lot of people who don't have that. And you keep seeing posts where people are 55 years old and they still owe $40,000. You know what I mean? There's people who the initial loan was $50,000. And they've paid off $50,000, but they still have a balance of $12,000 because the interest rates were so high, or it wasn't a locked-in interest rate. You know what I mean? And so again, there's also conversations about the lack of education that people receive with the loans, because they kind of give you a very brushed over Sesame Street recollection of how the loan operates, and then people get set up. You know what I mean? And then again, think about the people who don't get to finish school. Think about the people who go to college and, I don't know, their parent dies, so they go back home. Because maybe they can't afford it, or their parents get divorced. The divorce rate in this country is high. They can't afford the school, and they still have to pay those loans back. I feel like if you take out college loans, or I feel like if you go to college but you didn't get to finish and you took out loans, I feel like you shouldn't have to pay them back because you didn't get the degree. But it is what it is. That's me. It's also the 30th anniversary of the Rodney King video. I don't have a whole lot to say on it, but it's just interesting to see that in 30 years we haven't seen any progress. You would have thought that would have been the wake-up call to make things better, and I feel like things got worse. I think when Rodney King's situation happened, for a lot of people, it was like, finally, we have it on tape. This is what we've been talking about, because people used to gaslight folks that said, no, the police brutality is going on. When you go back and you look at the conversations that happened around the Watts riots back in 65, either 65 or 67, I want to say it was 65. A lot of it has to do with, again, police brutality. And folks are saying, no, it's not police brutality. Those black folks just don't know how to act. They're violent. They don't know how to obey the law, and the police have to enforce it. And people didn't understand and know. And just think about it. Back in the 60s, it was worse than what was happening in the 90s. And so, boom, people just, they're over it. So we fast forward to 91, and you finally see the clip, and you're watching this man just get beat down and kicked and hit with the clubs. And then after all that, all the police are acquitted. Like, wow. And it's funny because we get to 2021, it's the same thing. Now they're killing children. You know what I mean? They kill people for any and everything. And again, after what we've seen with the insurrection, like I said, I never want to hear another conversation about police not being able to control the rage or the violence, or, pull back some. I never want to hear that conversation again, because we watched on live TV what happened. And it also ties into education, because I've been seeing a lot of clips lately with teachers who are just getting it wrong in regards to history. And this is why I say, for those of you who raise children or have children, or you're raising your nieces or cousins or whoever, you're going to have to educate your kids at home, because sadly, not every teacher has the best intentions. And there's a lot of teachers who don't understand race in this country. So I saw a clip where the teacher, this was a few weeks back, was having a debate with the students about the N-word. And he was trying to say how it had nothing to do with race, and how, it was so on and so forth. And so there's this black student who is arguing with the teacher and saying, no, this is what it means. And the teacher was like, well, you keep it up, you can go to the principal's office. I'm just like, here we go. So now, again, A black voice is being silenced in the name of protecting white feelings, protecting the idea of white people always being the moral compass of the world. And then the other clip I saw was the teacher, I think it was a science teacher, saying that, Breonna Taylor, she brought it on herself. She shouldn't have been hanging with somebody who was a criminal. And the students were correcting her like, no, that wasn't the case. And secondly, they went to the wrong house. And the person that they were looking for, they already had in custody. And she was with somebody totally different. And the teacher didn't even want to acknowledge that they were in the wrong. They still wanted to hold on to the fact that they thought they were right. Well, it is what it is. She put herself in that position. And if it's a no-knock warrant, you have to listen because he took the first shot. And I'm like, these are the teachers? With everything happening in the country, with everything you've seen happen in relation to race relations in the country and so on and so forth, you would think that there would be a more concerted effort to at least listen and understand. Because listen, people may try to give Generation Z a lot of flack. Those kids are not stupid. They know what's up. I think, there is a conversation about sometimes the generational divides. There's often kind of like the baby boomer versus millennial, and now you're kind of seeing like millennials and Gen Z go at it on occasion. But, these kids are not out of the loop on everything. Like, they know what's up because they've seen it in their face. Their experience, especially in social media, one, I think society has been desensitized to trauma because we see it so much now, but this is their norm. You know what I mean? Every single time they go on TikTok or Twitter or whatever, they're always seeing somebody getting shot by the police, or there's been a lot that's happened in their lifetime. The same way there's been a lot that's happened in the lifetime of millennials and even those in the latter element of Generation X. And so, these teachers, it's just like, really? And that's why I say, like, it's so important that you have to also teach your kids at home, because the schools will have your kids confused when it comes to civics. It's just not there. The history curriculums are dated. And this is not to go after teachers, because again, I work in the after school realms, but it's to go after the fact that our curriculums are dated, they're not accurate. And because this is still a very racist country, there's a lot of people who step outside of their profession and put their personal feelings into the reality of what is, so that they can protect an identity that they want to hold on to in order to feel somewhat superior, in order to feel comfortable with Black death or Black trauma, in order to feel justified in the foolery that happens, to make it seem like things aren't as bad as they seem. It's all in your mind. And if Breonna Taylor would have just complied, she was asleep. Okay. Let me go to some comments here. Where are we at here? They have nothing else to do. Somebody said, yes, how HBCUs are about their grass. Yeah, don't we step in? Yeah, that's a conversation about the yard. Somebody said, I'm starting to have my doubts about Black Lives Matter. Like I told you, I'm not a part of any organization or anything. I just learned that that's not my lane. I think with Black Lives Matter, I understand that there's the foundation and then there's the movement. And I think a lot of what happens gets mixed up and lost in the shuffle. And then, of course, there's like, I forgot how much money has been raised. And there's conversations about where the money's going. There's a lot going on with them. That's why I'm like, I'm not a part of anything. But the conversation is still important. You know what I mean? Because that conversation was there before Black Lives Matter became a thing. That's kind of where I stand at things. And I think a lot of people just tend to say the phrasing because that's kind of, it opens the conversation. For me, I don't even like the phrase because I feel like it's you trying to appease and appeal to white folks. To me, it's like, I matter too. I shouldn't have to plead for, you to see me as a human. If not, F you. That's how I look at it. But I understand why it's there. But yeah, so I'm not a part of anything. I believe in working locally within, your collective. If there's some kind of grassroots organization, go for it. I tend to just write the check. And I continue to just do my thing at my center with my populations. And, I'll go to different community events. I'll support different organizations. And if they have something, I'll go to it, or, I'll do my part that way. But I just never wanted to be associated with any groups, because then when stuff hits the fan, you go down with that group. So that just hasn't been my thing. You know what I mean? Let's see. Thank you, Gerard, Busy Blue. Shout out to his channel as well, too. Let's see. What? I don't think one person should get 20 million from Black Lives Matter. Oh, that's Mike Brown's family, right? I think Mike Brown's family was saying that, I think they wanted a portion. I might have it wrong. Forgive me, because I haven't read the story yet. But I think it was saying like, this entire movement's been made off of the death of my child. And I'm just gonna stop talking about it because I don't know what I'm talking about. I'll come back to it. I don't want to put the wrong thing out there. All right. Let's see. Yeah, y'all frying them up in this chat section. Maybe I do got to come back and talk about it. Somebody said my congregation should be so much larger than what it is. Oh no, it's exactly the size it needs to be. The right people are hearing the message that need to hear it. Need to get to where it needs to go. America eats its young. I feel so bad for like my generation and the generation after me and the generation after me. It's just gonna be chaos for us. There's nothing to look forward to be honest, sometimes. And it's so just gloom and doom. I try to not be a pessimist about everything, but it just doesn't look good. And it's like, really, if you really don't have money already, it's so much harder to really build or do the things you'd like to do. I feel like I'm blessed and I'm in a capacity where I'm at a job that allows me the flexibility to be creative a little bit. And they've kind of allowed me to, work in the realms of things that also make me happy with my passions as well as my actual career. So I'm kind of blessed in that field. I mean, I don't make a lot of money, but I at least have peace and serenity. Like I'm happy with what I do and I have enough flexibility to work on other things. And so everybody doesn't get that luxury. There's some people who are working 2 and 3 jobs, and there's some people who don't work conventional hours, and they're still trying to raise a family and stuff. And it's a lot. Somebody said that teacher was a Trumper. That probably sounds about right. Let's see. Somebody said, "Oh, we'll be taking the things you observe and teach us for the rest of our lives, bro." Thank you. See, that's the point. That's all I need. Like, I just need the message to get out there, and people. That's why I said I never had a desire to go into politics, because I don't think that's my gift. I can explain politics and I can talk it, but I don't think I'm the best organizer. And I think there's some people out there that are really great. So I would rather have the people who know what they're doing go out there and do what they need to do, as opposed to me having so much ego that, okay, I want to do music and I want to have a YouTube channel and I want to screenwrite and I want to do all this and I want to be in office at the same time because I alone can fix the world. I'm not going to be that person. So I recognize that politics is probably not my strong point. I can talk about it, but I think there's people that are more qualified where that's really their life. And so that's why I've just never had a desire to want to be in politics. But who knows? I'm saying this now. It might be 20 years from now. I might be running for like city council or something, but I have no interest in being in politics right now. Okay. Somebody said HR 40 is shaping up to be sabotaged so far. Don't get me started on those hearings. Okay, HR 40 is pretty much the legislation that's going out in relation to the conversation around reparations and just the research on reparations, just to start a research committee. Because again, when it comes to reparations for Black folks, it's always, we got to research and we're going to do a 20-year project here and then another 30-year investment project to kind of just take a look at things. And so they're putting all these people in these hearings that really, one, have no understanding of the conversation, have no understanding of anything from a generational standpoint. And they keep making these stupid talking points. I remember this one guy had said some crap about, well, it paints me out to be a victim and I am not a victim. I was like, what are you talking about? Okay, we're not here for conversations of symbolism and feelings. The purpose of reparations, for anybody who was questioning the conversation of reparations, the purpose of it at the moment is, one, Black Americans have a claim in this country. And the claim is that, look, Black folks built this country through free labor. They were snatched away from wherever they lived, across the water, snatched away, pillaged, killed, murdered, castrated, raped, bred, everything. They built the country, right? They were enslaved for hundreds of years. And then once the slavery ended, we continued to build the country because then here came sharecropping. And here came, pretty much the Black codes and everything else that helped to build the policing and the judicial system and everything else that still was pretty much privatized and still helped to build the economy. And the fact that the generational accumulation of wealth that was created from the backs of slavery pretty much built all of our industries and corporations. And now these multi-billion-dollar corporations that exist today, a lot of them have ties back to slave money. And then when you get out of the sharecropping era, and then once you finally got to that, then there was the element of Jim Crow and the oppressive laws that made it so Black people didn't have an opportunity to try to build themselves up, and that there were laws that were still put there to make sure that Black people stayed at the bottom, whether it was housing discrimination, job discrimination, discrimination in healthcare, discrimination in education, discrimination in services, discrimination even if they wanted to serve in the military, even if they wanted to take a bullet for the country, they still had to be discriminated against. And then again, we're talking environmental racism. And when we talk about neighborhoods that were destroyed so that you could build a freeway system across, right through the neighborhood. We talked about Minneapolis before. I think, what picture was that? I just saw a city. I was just looking at it earlier today. I don't know if I still have it. Somebody has a post on Twitter. The post says, it doesn't work for every city, but in many cases, you can zoom in on Zillow's satellite view and see property lines as they existed in old neighborhoods before freeways were put through. And it shows 4 different cities. It doesn't say the cities though, but I mean, it's just a prime example. And like when you're looking at the picture, you're seeing where the freeways are, and then you're seeing the outlines of where these homes used to be. So the destroying of neighborhoods to build the freeways, okay? Even when you're talking about the railroad system, again, the labor that went into building that, there's just so many things that happen. And the fact that you had institutions and universities that were created from the wealth generated by slavery, and then black folks weren't even allowed in those institutions, and the fact that black people weren't allowed the same opportunities to build themselves or anything like that, and then the fact that when black folks finally had an opportunity to somewhat almost be something, then the idea of whiteness became a thing. Then, you know, once we got to the conversation of unions and black folks tried to join these unions, that's when white people decided, I'm not Polish anymore, I'm not Italian anymore, I'm not German, I'm white. Because if we can all bunch up together, you know, we'll finally even bring in the Irish that we don't like, because they can be white with us too. If we come together as white, we can overpower those people. They won't take our jobs, because at that point in time, black people were more skilled at a lot of things than white folks because of the work that we had to do. Because again, we weren't even allowed to have certain kind of jobs and so on and so forth. And the fact that, again, we talked about the redlining, but just talking about the generational wealth accumulated from something like redlining, or what was limited. And the fact that even if you had a decent job, even if you were a black doctor, you still couldn't live in the best of the best neighborhood that they would say. You still had to be in that red district. So when we talked about the value of property and trying to resell again and again, because it was in that red zone, you weren't going to get the same amount for that house that you could have got if it was the exact same house built in another area. And then again, when we talk about just the things happening in infrastructure and how it attacks black neighborhoods, when you look at something like Flint, and the fact that their water system was just all screwed up. And then people are like, well, why don't the people just move? You can't move if you live in a neighborhood where the water and the pipes are all screwed up. Nobody's going to buy the house. The house isn't worth anything. On top of the fact that now every child in that city has lead poisoning. And those are just some of the things that I just scratched the surface on. But all of those tie into the claim that black people have for what America owes them. And so what I'm seeing is the people in these commissions are purposely putting people up there who don't know the verbiage. They don't have the conversation. They don't have the range for the conversation. They don't know what they're talking about. They're latching on to pretty much right-wing talking points or very symbolic pieces like, well, look how far we've made it. You know, and they'll bring up, look at Oprah. Oprah was able to do it. Why couldn't you folks do it? Or they always bring up a celebrity or an entertainer to justify why black people are fine. And so it's like, okay, you know, you bring up LeBron, and you bring up Oprah and Serena Williams and I don't know, Beyonce or something like that. And that's justification as to why the 40+ million black Americans, you know, they don't need anything. And so everybody else all these other groups have gotten some kind of form of reparations, and they don't want to give it to black folks because they recognize that check that is owed is going to be so big that you're going to pretty much bankrupt this country when you pay what is owed, because it's in the trillions, and they don't want to write that check. That's what that's about. And I'm telling you what they're going to end up doing in the event that and again, it's bigger than just a check, because I feel like in order for reparations to work, it has to also undo the damage that has been done and set black Americans on a trajectory that is on par with everybody else. When you look at the wage gap and the differences of what white families own versus what black families own, it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? It makes absolutely no sense. Go and Google the numbers. Go look at the numbers of what black people are worth. They're pretty, I forgot, what is it, like $11 right now for the average black household of what they're worth? And so when you take all that into account, you know, it's bigger than just that. So it's a conversation about undoing the injustices in education. I think if you're talking about reparations, in addition to the check, I feel like college should be free. I feel like healthcare should be free. I feel like when it comes to housing, there needs to be some kind of stipulation where there's a huge, you know, something to counterbalance the fact that black people were left out of the housing market, the fact that black people were left out of the New Deal, the fact that black people were left out of the GI Bill until almost the 1980s, the fact that black people were left out of so much, the fact that even again, when we talk about something like welfare, the system changed once black folks became the face of it. They started gutting that system. The fact that now every single time you watch governments try to do a new budget, the main things that they're always trying to gut are programs that black people tend to benefit from. All of that, you have to make people whole in all that. So it's bigger than just a check. Because what's going to happen is if they ever say, yeah, okay, you folks can get some reparations, you know what they're going to do? They're going to do something real shady. It'll be, I don't know, a $500 billion bill, which is clearly not enough. And so every resident will get a few $1,000s, and then they're going to say, we're all even now. So y'all go ahead and take your little few $1,000s now, leave us alone. And then they're going to gut and undo any kind of progressive policy that is to make things equal when it comes to the playing field. Just like we saw in 2013 with Justice Roberts gutting the Voting Rights Act, you're going to see that same thing happen across the board in everything. Conversations around affirmative action, conversations about diversity programs and diversity court, all of that will be cut because they're going to say, you Negroes got your check, now shut up, all right? And clearly, a perfect example of why just the check doesn't work, look what happened with the Native Americans, okay? They got land, they got money. but there was no investment. There was no way to undo the damage that was done. And so when you're talking about people in America who are extremely poor, some of the largest populations of this country that are the poorest are Native Americans, because even though they got the check, it didn't undo what happened, because even if you get a check in a system that's still screwing you over, once the money runs out, you're still in that system. And so it's deeper than that. You know what I mean? It's a lot going on. So yeah, that HR 40 mess, I was like, y'all are so full of crap. I was watching a piece of that. I had to turn it off when they had that stupid football player on there saying his 2 cents. I'm like, why are you on here? Who gave you the expertise to have this conversation when there are already scholars who have done the research, done the work? This is their life. This is their livelihood. This is all they know. They can just spit numbers out like it's nothing and can just drop names and policy and ordinances. And I mean, binders full of evidence to say this, that, and the third. But for some reason in the United States, celebrities and entertainers are always our spokesperson for everything, which gets on my nerves. I don't need celebrities speaking for me. You know, it's different if they want to, you know, implement change, that's fine. But when it gets to the point where they jump and start becoming somebody that's in the way, I have a problem with that. Somebody like a LeBron James who decides to open a school, I totally support that. Good for you, LeBron. Or when he speaks out about police brutality or what's happening, I rock with that. But when it gets to the element where you have celebrities who have already made their money, and now they want to get in the way of progress that can somewhat affect other people in a positive realm, and you want to get in the way of that because you think, well, you know, black folks have made it while you're sitting in your mansion trying to speak on behalf of black folks and you don't even know the conversation. That's why I was looking at somebody like T.I. Crazy that one time when they had that Revolt TV summit, and he was talking about, look at all the strides black people have made, and then the only examples he had was celebrities. I said, pretty much that puts the burden on black people where you have to either be extremely talented as an entertainer or an athlete to make it. And that's not a fair assessment of what the American dream is supposed to be, because white people don't have that burden. Okay, so why should that be the burden for us? You know what I mean? So just absolutely crazy. And I think somebody was pissed off with me one time in one of the videos because I was frying up the fact that they had Amy Schumer sitting on the panel, because I said, I don't understand why she's there. And the person that responded and was like, well, she's one of the white people who understands and is trying to learn. So why are we being so exclusive and dismissive to her wanting to help? And I'm like, if she's trying to learn, she doesn't need to be in charge of the conversation. That's not her lane. So she needs to sit in the audience and learn like everybody else. Why are you going to put somebody who doesn't understand the black plight on a panel talking about the black plight to black people? Please. I didn't see her say nothing for Monique. That's all I'm saying, since she cares so much. Okay. Thank you. Is that Britt L. Smith? Thank you. I appreciate that. She says, just supporting you, Calvin. Thank you for what you do in the community. Even though you don't do it for recognition, it doesn't go unnoticed. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. And so again, and that's why I also said, don't fall for the tricks of symbolism, because we've been seeing it. Like, you've seen the energy shift since the summer, right? So when things first happened with George Floyd, you saw the outrage, right? Everybody, this is ridiculous. You know, people parading in the streets, and, you know, it finally, the conversation finally started to get there. And finally, black people weren't being silenced for talking about police brutality because there was just too much that happened all at the same time. Ahmaud Arbery had just happened. Breonna Taylor had just happened. George Floyd had just happened. You know what I mean? And then at the same time, the foolery with Amy Cooper, who called the police on the black dude for asking, you know, because he asked her to clean up after the dog. All of that happened all within like the same month, right? And so all of that's finally taking place. People are finally seeing what the issues are. And what did you see everybody do? You saw a lot of folks hop on a trend. They recognized it was a popular thing to talk about. You saw influencers. I don't like that phrase, but apparently there were influencers, and you saw like white influencers even jump on the bandwagon. The funniest one was like the lady who didn't really do anything, but she asked the guy to take a picture of her hammering like a wood board after one of the protests. Hey, can you get a picture of me hammering this? And so she, thank you, BLM. You know, so it became like a cool thing to kind of just hop on and a trend. And then the politicians started saying all the right things. They were saying everything we wanted to hear. They're going to the black churches and doing the speeches, and they got on the kente cloth, and they're going to stand in solidarity. And I'm just, okay, this is nice. But the problem with symbolism is symbolism becomes a distraction. You don't need the symbolism until the problem is fixed. You know, once the problem is fixed, we can celebrate and look back on how far, yeah, that's, you know, we can look back on how far we've come once the issue is fixed. But what happened is they brought out the symbolism brigade and the parade and the streamers and the balloons right at the beginning before anything got done, right? And so people made their little Instagram boxes black, and people were making those posts. I am a black man. I don't talk down to my community. I don't fight. I work for, you know, and then they had the other one for black. I am a black woman. We don't tear each other down. I'm like, y'all hopping on to all this respectability crap. And no judgment to those who participated. Good for you. Use your voice. But damn, man, it's like we hopped on all of the craziness. And so now, fast forward, nothing has changed. We see that the trial for the officer that killed George Floyd is finally going, taking place. There's no telling how that's going to go. You've seen a lot of the hearings take place in regards to some of these police brutality cases, and a lot of these officers are getting slaps on the wrist. Look at what the officers that killed Breonna Taylor got charged with. Only one of them got charged, and it's not even a real charge. The charge that he got is the fact that because he shot into the apartment and he was a danger to the people in the apartment next door on the other side, that's what he's getting charged for. Like, they're playing in your faces. And so again, symbolism is great. I understand why it's needed. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I love to see the clips of when you see like the toddler looking at the TV and there's somebody that looks like them. I love that, because some of us didn't get that as children. We didn't get that very often. Beautiful, but that's not gonna be the sole purpose and the sole resource of what fixes the problems. And so here we are, where there's all these issues, and we're not latching on to the things that are tangible, which is why, like I said, even when this past election came, I told y'all from jump, I wasn't excited to begin with. There was not a single candidate that I endorsed. It was just like, I know that it's the game. There's a way it's being played. There are some benefits to having certain people in power. Like I said, I'm glad Cuckoo Man is out. But again, you're even seeing the foolery now with the new administration. I know they just got in, but it's business as usual. They couldn't wait to go and blow up some stuff in Syria. And so as much as I fried up Trump for that crap he did with Iran, fast forward, Biden doing the same thing. I'm like, God dang, y'all don't, like Frankie and set it off. He couldn't even wait. Like, jeez. Thank you, Faith First. And so it's just like, man, and just like Shanice keeps saying, where is my Stimmy? Give these people their money, man. Give the people their money, like, because people are just trying to pull themselves out of a hole. Like, jeez, you know what I mean? What else did I have? I done went so far off what was on my notes. Y'all done got me in my pocket going off. Let me keep it moving. We're almost done here. And you know what? I do want to address it too, because some people did ask me. I've seen the conversations about people saying that all of a sudden Black folks are so violent towards the Asian community, and that we're going out and attacking Asian Americans, and there's just this anti-Asian American sentiment in the country right now. And I'm like, what America are y'all looking at? What we're not going to do is make Black folks the face of what white folks are doing. No disrespect. I do recognize that there are some isolated incidents, and we've seen some moments where, yes, there has been a Black aggressor that has done something to somebody in the Asian community. But what we're not going to do is pretend that Black people have any kind of structural oppressive system that does anything to those in the Asian community. Because again, what you've seen are isolated incidents, but the anti-Asian animosity that you're seeing is coming in waves from white Americans. So I'm like, I don't know why y'all try to make us the face of that. And I think the reason they try that is because, again, because we've seen everything that's happened since the summer as far as police brutality, and you've seen the rise of white nationalism since 2017. You saw what happened with the insurrection. You saw the fact that folks tried to deny the Black vote and say that Black votes weren't real and that they were illegal and so on and so forth. They're trying to shift the narrative and take some of the smoke that white America collectively has been getting and try to put it on a new group. And so they try to put it on us and say it's all on us. And I'm like, that is not what we're doing. And you want to know why I feel like, again, I need folks to stop kind of doing that same foolery, because if we want to have that conversation, and I hate to have it, but it's kind of like, no disrespect, but those in the Asian community, y'all have enough anti-Blackness for the world to share. Because again, we talked about the whole conversation of like model minority when I was frying up Austin Chang, the guy from Nigeria who decided, that you didn't need to have a Black History Month. It was offensive because all the other races weren't represented. And it was like, they are represented. You just didn't do the research to go and look at all the other groups that have some kind of moment of observance. But again, Black folks are always collateral and the first on the chopping block with everything. But again, it's kind of like, one of the things that's always been an issue, because if you want to talk about the issues that exist with Black Americans and I guess those in the Asian community, is more so just the business endeavors. If anything, Black folks aren't thinking about the Asian community. We're not at home talking about, oh, how we're going to go and fight this person. Even when you think about media, think about television. Who are the people that were making these characters that pretty much were what you would say racist tropes or stereotypes? It was usually white entertainment, whether it was the soup guy on Seinfeld, no more soup. It was whether it was him, whether it was Miss Swan on Mad TV, who was played by, Alex Borstein from Family Guy, whether it was the Asian guy on South Park. Like, those are the tropes and things that have been created in your image. Was that same thing happening in Black media? You can say to an extent, maybe if you saw something like Don't Be a Menace, the scene with Hurry Up and Buy, but that correlates to the movie Don't Be a Menace, which was more so reflective of the relationships that Black Americans and Asians had in a lot of cities, because a lot of Asians move into Black neighborhoods and open businesses, but treat the people like trash. There's nothing like going into a store, and as soon as you walk in, you're being watched. You're being followed. Plus, they got 850 cameras in there. You don't even feel that you're welcome. Mind you, you're giving them your money. And so I think that's an issue, and I think that animosity is warranted, but nobody's being violent in that realm and going out to attack Asian people. Absolutely not. Because really, if it were that bad, take your businesses and go to your neighborhood and open them there. and see how far you get. Black folks have pretty much helped you guys collect a lot of the wealth that you got, and you did nothing for black folks. No disrespect. It's not all of y'all, but it's enough of y'all for me to make this argument. Okay, y'all have been silent on a lot of things happening to black people collectively. Now, I will say that this argument is more so a conversation amongst generational immigrant families, because I think the conversation changes when you start going first gen, second gen, third gen, because really I think the issue is more so first gen folks who come straight from across the water. And like I said, the same way that we talk about how folks have been conditioned to stay away from black folks, it's the same thing when it comes to these businesses and everything. I told you, my best friend growing up, her mom had her own beauty supply store. And she talked about the fact that, because again, and mind you, the reason that there isn't even a hair care cosmetic business is because black people opened the door for the Asian community to have that. Because again, when we came out of World War II, white Americans were scared of y'all. We didn't put y'all in camps during World War II. That was white America. If you go to Washington State and go to what used to be the Puyallup Fairgrounds, that was a whole entire Asian camp. You saw all these Asian Americans get their land taken, stolen from white Americans, and they were locked away for years because white Americans were fearful of Asians after Pearl Harbor. And they put everybody in the Asian box. Even though Pearl Harbor was Japan, it didn't matter if you were from Vietnam, China, Cambodia, Korea, it didn't matter. All y'all were the same. They put y'all in camps and everything like that. And so when those camps finally did reopen and people were trying to rebuild their lives and everything, which community opened their doors? Black women taught y'all how to do our hair, how to do nails and everything. You created an industry and then you push black folks out of it. So going back to my story that I was saying about my best friend's mom, when she would order the catalog or the catalog to order the products, they have such a monopoly on the black hair care business that those catalogs are in Korean. They're not even in English anymore. And on top of that, the wholesalers don't even sell to black tenants. So you've seen a few stories where there's black people who open their own beauty supply stores, so on and so forth. Half of them end up having to close because they can't even get the inventory in the store because people won't sell to them. And so you want to sit here and point out a few random isolated incidents and assume that all of a sudden all 40 million black Americans have animosity towards the Asian community and that we're going out there being violent when white people have been doing everything and anything to y'all, to the fact where you go and erase your own identity so you can have assimilation and proximity to what they have, and they've taught you to hate yourself. You guys are the ones, no disrespect, you're having entire eyelid surgeries so you don't even look the way that you look so that you can be accepted in this country. That's not something we put on y'all, so don't put that crap on us. The nerve. And then I saw some clip and the guy was like, he couldn't even say it without stuttering. That's how I knew it was some BS. He was like, I think the black community needs to stop being violent. Okay, all right. That's why, don't put me in this people of color bubble that y'all be trying to put folks in, because these are the games that happen. There is so much anti-blackness in a lot of these communities. And again, as soon as you get two or three incidents, it's somehow a reflection of the entire population. So now all 40 million of us hate Asians, apparently. That's what they're trying to tell us. You got the wrong one with that. Like the nerve. The absolute nerve. I do believe that there are issues amongst everybody in certain instances, but when you want to talk about the anti-Asian animosity that's been circulating, who are the pioneers and the spearheads of that? You had a previous president pretty much blame y'all for everything. Kung flu, the China virus. I remember watching that White House briefing, and the Asian woman had asked the question, and what did Trump say? Ask China. She wasn't even China. She wasn't even Chinese. She even had to take her mask off. Like, what? But again, they pushed that narrative, put that on them, and so on and so forth. And then you see one or two incidents, and now you're going to try to put it on black folks. Like, we're the ones who did that. Did y'all forget that y'all killed that little girl in LA that time because you thought she was shoplifting? And so her life didn't matter to the fact that you could kill her over something you thought she shoplifted, and she didn't even steal it. You know what I mean? Did we not see the clip of when, they pretty much tackled the woman down over some false eyelashes a few years ago because they thought she was stealing? I'm like, at this point, the conversation around money and integrity goes out the window when it comes to blackness. So don't come and try to paint us to be these aggressors. Black folks aren't thinking about y'all. Black folks ain't thinking about anybody but trying to take care of their own community. The real issue is black folks have to live on the edge from everybody else. Everybody. You know what I mean? No disrespect to those in the Asian community, but again, you guys have the conversations with your kids, don't bring a black man home. Same thing with the Latino community, don't bring a black man home. Same thing with pretty much every community, don't bring a black man home. We don't have those conversations in the same realm. You know what I mean? There are conversations where black folks kind of side-eye folks that date outside the race, but it's never been something where we have whole terms for other groups of people. Even the racial slurs that are hurled or created in the names of people that are Asian or of Asian descent were made by white folks. So your real enemy, you're fighting the wrong folks. You don't went after us, and we ain't even did nothing collectively. We are not collectively oppressing Asian people at all. And again, when we talk about affirmative action, some of these lawsuits where people are trying to end affirmative action, who are the faces of those lawsuits in addition to white folks? People in the Asian community. So do not try and put us in that same boat, because y'all in the way. Y'all tried it. Anyway, let's read some comments. All right, let's have some fun now. Let's talk about some fun topics. I didn't mean to fry y'all up like that. But dang, they tried it. And another thing I do want to say, for every marginalized group of people, do us a favor and stop using blackness as the measurement to your oppression. Because then again, it just showcases the fact that, again, anti-blackness is still the standard of oppression in this country. If you have to utilize any kind of black struggle to prove your point, this is our civil rights era. Well, we didn't come out of ours yet. We still in the same nonsense. So again, now you're seeing even the black plight be erased to kind of help other people in their struggle. And the other thing is, we have always been open to supporting any and everybody. That's also been one of our flaws, because we will go and die on the hill for everybody all the time. And people don't even do that for us. Yeah, you're finally seeing people talk about the police brutality, because at this point, if you're ignoring it, you're just a terrible person. But again, we have always stood on the front lines for literally any and everybody. Hell, we even do it for white folks. We literally do it for white people, literally. And so again, what you're not going to do is come and again, paint us to be the villain of anything. And again, you're still using us as a standard of measurement when it comes to being oppressed, because that just highlights the fact that you recognize that that issue hasn't gone anywhere. It hasn't gone anywhere, which is why I'm not the biggest fan of, don't put me in the people of color bubble, because it erases what the black plight is, and it kind of waters down things. And then other groups latch on to the black plight and the work that black people have done to pull themselves out of their situations, just to take that away and put it into their own struggle and put it in the people of color bubble. And then the black issues get pushed away. So even sometimes when it comes to legislation that's being introduced, it's always a conversation of, oh, well, this is going to be for people of color and everybody else. And it's like, well, damn. Well, and you know, when you start dividing stuff up, we still going to get the short end of the stick. And that's why I'm also not a fan of the term people of color, because really what it does is it validates the idea that whiteness is still the standard. It pretty much means there's white and then there's everybody else, people of color. And so that people of color bubble is black folks, Latinos, Native Americans, Asians, Polynesian, Pacific Island, everybody is in that bubble. And now all of us got to fight this, whatever fight we're fighting, but then there's still anti-blackness even in that bubble. And so you got to fight against the very people who claim to be your brother or your sister, but they're still using you as a ploy as to, why their life isn't the way it should be. No, that's not how this works. Foolery. Y'all got me talking 800 words a minute. Anyway, the nerve. I don't know what video it was, but that guy, we need black Americans to stop attacking us. Okay. Like I said, I acknowledge I have seen a few incidents, but again, that is not some collective thing that we've been doing not when all these white folks been doing that. Y'all know who are attacking you all. Don't do that. You know who's burning down your businesses. The nerve. The entire media has created a racist trope around your image, and it wasn't us that did it. And you're gonna put us on that. And I'm not gonna talk about when I look overseas and I see them TV shows y'all have where y'all be doing blackface. Happy March, everybody. Happy Women's History Month. All right. I hate those conversations, because then it makes it look like I don't like anybody, and that's not the case. It's just like, no, you got to have those conversations just to put the truth out there. Because again, I have no hate in my heart towards anybody, but there's some things that I don't agree with, and you're not going to put that on us. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I wish I could remember the video. I don't know what it was called, but whatever. It had to come to me later. Somebody said, Black people should own beauty supply stores. And we do own our own beauty supply stores. But like I was saying, Shanti, the issue is a lot of Black owners, it's hard to get the inventory, because at this point, so many Asian-owned companies own all of those products. So something like a Dark and Lovely, like the hair perm that you be seeing in the store with the lady with the black short hair and everything like that, that's an Asian-owned company. So, there's only a handful of Black-owned hair products that you can really put in there. And so, or if they do sell to, Black owners, it's at a different price. Now, I will say there are some in that Asian community that operate as a plug, and they're willing to, put in a favor for people. Because I'm not going to say that everybody operates the same way with how it comes to, the way that business is handled. But you've seen it. I think I told you guys before, like, sometimes we used to just hang at my friend's, the mom's shop, and you'd always watch, like, this is back in Washington State. There's a bunch of like Asian-owned hair supply stores and stuff. You'd watch the owners of those stores come into her shop, watch how she does things, because the store is called Valentino's, and I think they specialize in like wigs and stuff. And so the owner, what she would do is like she had special rooms where the women could go on and try the wigs, so they didn't have to do it in front of everybody. And she'd have people in there helping them cut it and stuff. They would go in there and watch, and then you go into their shop the next week, and now they got a station where you can put the wigs on, and they got somebody cutting it. I'm like, yeah, y'all are on. Ooh, okay. So yeah, it's a lot. Like Black people, there's a lot of people who own them. I think there was a documentary on YouTube. It's still on there, and it's from like 10 years ago, or maybe 15. but they were asking this woman like, well, how many Asian-owned, you know, beauty supply hair stores are there in Chicago? And she was like, oh, it's like 250 or something. And they're like, well, how many black ones? She was like, I think it's like 10 or 11. So again, it's a whole system. We open the door and help to give opportunity so people could build themselves up in a very racist world, because we understood what it was like to be on the receiving end of racism from a structural standpoint. And then the money started talking. Capitalism, that's how it works. Thank you, Christine. That's her name. Latasha. I couldn't remember her last name. Over some orange juice. That's the girl that got killed. Well, you know, they killed the girl, and it was back in the 90s because they thought she was stealing from the convenience store. And that pisses me off too, because I just gassed y'all up in like the last video where I was talking about how either that video, no, it was the video before that, where I was talking about how like even when you go to different cities, you know, there are sections of town that are usually predominantly like Asian run as far as businesses and everything, and even the signs are in a different language. And I was saying how I don't even have an issue with that, because I respect the fact that within their collective culture, they have their own experience that they would like to share, and who am I to take that away from them? I had just gassed y'all up. Look how y'all do me. See how we see? We are the world. We are the children. Okay. What's going on? Let's see. Somebody said they lock us out. The inventory is brought by Asian people, and they strangle the market by not selling to black business owners, therefore isolating customers from buying because they don't carry the brand. And see, and the issue is, again, this is not that entire community, because there are a lot of Asian people that are not, they don't even operate that same way. So it's like y'all messed it up for them, because now they got to answer for y'all, like crazy, you know. So a lot of things that they say are propaganda. I'm not sure who that's in direction to, but I'm sure it ties to something I said. Somebody said black plus green, BLK plus GRN is an all black owned products beauty site. Thank you for sharing that, Maverick. Cuz what's my view on Roland Martin? He's all rightish. The beef I have with Roland Martin is he lets his ego get in the way. And sometimes when he's challenged, he doesn't do a really good job of refuting whatever he's challenged with. And so he starts to try to talk down to people. I don't like that. Like the one thing I try my best not to do, if I don't agree with somebody on something, I'm not going to tear you down and try to assume that I know everything. Because like I said, there's still stuff I'm learning. I don't think I know it all at all. And if I stand corrected, I stand corrected and have no problem acknowledging that. He doesn't do that. And he talks down to folks. And then sometimes he plays into silly games. Like there was no reason to have Diamond and Silk on your show. You know that, you know, Diamond and Silk are the two, they were the stunt for Trumpers. You recognize that they're being used as a ploy pretty much for entertainment. You know that they're being used as the token Negro. They have no real point to speak on. And so why invite them to your show just to pretty much tear them down and humiliate them? You know, like that's their bread and butter. It's like, it's counterproductive. You know what I mean? Shoot, the last time I saw Diamond and Silk, somebody sent me a clip. They were beatboxing and rapping about not taking away their meat, because it was some conversation against, you know, impossible meat or something like that. And, you know, the one with the longer hair was rapping and the other one, I was like, I'm not embarrassed for y'all because that's y'all, but wow. Okay. You got integrity, anything for a check, but go ahead and keep selling out your community so you can get that little $1,200 check you keep giving y'all every month, but y'all still in that same apartment. All right. And still got them same wigs too at that. No disrespect. Plus, I was at a party once. I told you that time I was at Essence Fest, and somehow me and my friend, we ended up in like this. Well, we had like, it was dope. The first night we ended up in this industry party, and it was super tight because somehow I was in there with one of Janet Jackson's like PR people. So, you know, I was trying to get a job. And like April Ryan was in there and a bunch of other random people. But then like the next day they had like a follow-up party, and then Roland Martin came to that party. And it was interesting because it was a day party. It was the last day of Essence Fest. He comes in there, I'm here, y'all. And we were like, oh, okay, what's up? All right. You know, I mean, kudos to him for always bringing people on his show, and he still had the show on TV one day. I thought it was a good show, but he just has too much ego. I don't like that. And he'd be wearing up Steve Harvey suits too. That'd be killing me. Let's see. Just arrogant. Lord. Because there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. You know what I mean? I feel like you can be confident, because I think sometimes people try to police Black voices, because sometimes, like, one of the weirdest things is sometimes when people decide to unsubscribe, they want to let you know why they're unsubscribing. So this random white guy that was from like some other countries, like, I'm unsubscribing because, you know, you spend too much time talking Black people stuff, and you're very arrogant when you talk about race, and you just, I had to unsubscribe. I'm like, okay, yeah, you didn't have to announce it. Just, I'll see you later. But again, I was wondering, like, is that arrogance because I was confident with what I was talking about, and you think that's arrogance because you believe that Black people are supposed to be nimble when addressing white folks, or what? But you tell me who you down with, see, because all I know is that I'm down with G-O-D. Okay. Let's see. Tavis Smiley, I don't follow him enough, but he's an interesting one too. I don't follow a lot of people, to be honest. You know, I'll give people a chance, and then after they mess up a few times, I'm like, all right, I see where your energy is. I think some people do bring value to some conversations, but sometimes a lot of people are very self-indulgent and their egos get in the way. And that's not about Tavis Smiley, because I don't follow him enough to really have an opinion on him, but you see that all the time. I haven't paid attention to this Dr. Seuss story. I know it has something to do with something being racist, but I'd have to follow and pay attention. I'm out of the loop. Okay, let me get these last few topics and then we'll wrap up. Okay, dang, it's all, we've been on here for what, 2 hours? All right. Because I know somebody asked me about the whole Janet thing. There's a documentary Janet has signed on for. It's supposed to come out next year. I think I might be in it. I don't know. Let's cross our fingers. She's had a camera crew following her for like the last few years. And I remember when I went to the DC show at the State of the World tour, and there was a moment when I ran into her choreographer. So I was having like a quick conversation because, again, I was trying to get a job. Let me know if y'all need me for the next leg. You know, I dance too. But her camera crew was like right there, like in my face with the camera. So I'm like, but they didn't give me a press thing to sign off on. So maybe I'm not in it. But then at the same time, like 2018, I don't know. Me and Miss Jackson have been all over the country for a little bit. Like, because I went to the State of the World tour twice. I went by myself, and then I took my godmom, and then I went to Essence, and she was at Essence as well. And then I was at TRL the day she I got invited to that. That was kind of cool. But I was at TRL the day she did like the Made for Now video and premiere, and then I saw her in Vegas too. And her camera crew was at all of those. And so I'm definitely in some B-roll footage. So that'll be cool if I was in it. And then so we'll see how that goes. Hopefully she talks about a lot of the things I think people have questions on, things like the Super Bowl, but also just her own legacy. And so that'd be interesting. I know that there's also a Tina Turner documentary coming out as well. And her story's always been very interesting. And like I've said before, I've always said, as far as living female entertainers, I've always said I think my favorite 3 female entertainers that are what I say showmanship performers, where they sing, dance, and give you a full thing. I've always said with like Tina, Janet, and Beyonce. I just feel like there were some gifts there, and I feel like each of them are an extension of the other, which is pretty cool. So, you know, give your flowers while these people are still here. And like I said, that was for the showmanship performers. I didn't say best vocalists in the world or the best anything. I just said the showmanship performers. That's all I said. So don't come in here trying to argue and start naming other artists. We're not doing that today. Anyway, and then somebody was asking me my 2 cents. I did see the people, what was it? The United States vs. Billie Holiday movie. I thought it was okay, but I do hope that a lot of these biopics do not just become Fed stories. We already know that the Feds were after everybody, which is fine, but it's kind of like I would also like to see more about their legacy. I think the movie spent so much time on her drug habit and so much time on just, it almost made her almost an emotionless being that had no feelings and was just sex driven and was high all day and was always on the run. And I do think Andra Day did a phenomenal job with her portrayal, but I don't know if I was crazy over the movie. I think it got better during the second half. The first half I wasn't crazy over. I was pissed that in the first 10 minutes she was already doing heroin. That pissed me off watching that. And again, that's also a Lee Daniels conversation. He's not really one of my favorite directors like that. I think he has some decent work, but I think his viewpoints sometimes on things are a little off. But, you know, I still think the cast did a really good job. And yeah, good for Andra Day. I thought she did a really great job for that to be pretty much her first movie role. Thank you, LV947. Thank you for what you're doing. I learned so much from your channel, and I do hope you get a chance to thank you for it someday. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so, and then, oh, yeah, and then y'all asked me about Judas and the Black Messiah. I did see it. I thought it was okay. It was all right. I didn't know what to make of it. I had to watch it twice. I don't know if Daniel should have played Fred Hampton. That was the one, because I thought it would have made more sense to have Lakeith Stanfield play Fred Hampton. But, you know, it is what it is. I thought the movie was still okay. Yeah, I love that it did expose what was happening as far as, you know, COINTELPRO and the feds, you know, doing what they do. But it was okay. I had a different expectation for the movie, and it didn't really meet it for me. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess. I don't know. I feel like each time I watched it, I liked it a little bit more. I think there were things that they still got right. There were a lot of things they got right. There were some things where I was like, I would have done it differently. But overall, I think my beef was more so the script. I don't think the delivery of the film was too bad as far as the acting, but I think the script I wasn't too crazy over. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go back and watch it again. There's some movies I watch a few times before I have my full opinion on. And then somebody's asking, am I gonna watch Coming to America? I certainly plan to, just because it's what everybody else is doing, and I want to be a part of the conversation too. All right. I think we've almost got to everything, guys. We have. Wonderful. Okay, so I can do a few questions before we wrap up. Khadijah Jenkins said, I was in JHS when she was murdered, Natasha Harlins. My school was a few blocks away from that liquor store. That's terrible, isn't it? Thank you for sharing that. That was sad. That was a really sad case. And that's not even the only one. That's just one of the ones that got media attention, you know? Avocado Queen said, Tavis Smiley, didn't they take away his show after he was, sexual assault? There's a whole lot of people getting cases right now. Okay. Oh, Whitney's on here. What's up, Whitney? That's why I went to Essence with. I didn't know you was on here. She said, my friends, tell all these folks who I am. Okay, there you go. That was my road dog. Essence was lit too. We had a ball. I told y'all, like, when we went to rent the car we wanted wasn't there. And so all they had was a top-down convertible Camaro. Yo, we was cruising in that thing. That was dope. That was a lot of fun. All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Janet doc. That'd be fun to watch. All right. Somebody said, I went to the State of the World tour back in 2017 in Concord, California. Good times. I saw her back in 2001 at the All For You tour as well. State of the World tour, that might be one of my favorite Janet tours. I like that tour more than the All For You tour, to be honest. I don't know. That was just a fun show to go to. I liked it because it was kind of like Janet's like comeback tour, because she had postponed the Unbreakable tour because she had the baby. So it was kind of cool to see her come back and like just kill it. So that'd be fun. Y'all know I always love me some Janet. She's my last living childhood favorite entertainer. All my favorite entertainers from childhood are dead. So I have to really, I doubled up the support, because I'm like, I got to give the flowers while she's here, because Michael's gone, Prince is gone, Whitney's gone, and Left Eye died from TLC. And then Hammer's still alive, but he was only popular for like, his career died before I could get older, because he was one of my favorites too. And Bobby Brown and Heavy D, who's now gone. So, I have my favorites of the new acts, but as far as those bigger ones, like when I was little, there were just certain artists that I felt were like literally like superheroes. Like they could just do anything. I always felt that about Michael and Janet when I would watch their shows, like, because they used to always have those Michael specials on TV too. But I used to feel like they were just like superheroes. And when they would perform, they could do anything. And you just knew that they could do it, kind of like it was just, and it was a standard where you weren't even impressed with what they were doing because you just expected them to do it. That's what was dope about both Michael and Janet. Okay. Let's keep going. Somebody said Lee Daniels in his writing, and then they put a sad face or side eye. What's up, Alan? Yeah, his writing is half and half with me. Half and half. Any thoughts on Black people moving back to the South? That's the thing a lot of us tend to do. And I think a lot of people tend to move to the South when they get older too, because I just think it's a space of familiarity. And like, I just think the South, for a lot of people, even if you didn't grow up in the South, you normally have roots there. Your grandma or somebody still lives there. And so you always went to the South for the summer or Christmas. And there's just a good nostalgia there. That's been my experience. Like, most of my family is in Savannah, Georgia, or they're in Utica, Mississippi. And so, the South for me is, that feels like home. Even though I'm from Washington State, Savannah feels like home to me. Like, that's home. And I have family in Hilton Head as well too. But yeah, that's what feels like home to me. So yeah, I think a lot of people go back to the South, and a lot of Black folks get into a position where they just want to be around a Black collective, where it's like you go in the store and you're not the only one. That's an experience. You live in an area where it's only a handful of y'all. And so you feel like you're always representing for your race everywhere you go. The experience of living in a town where the population or the Black population is 1%, you got to just think about the experiences. Like, they don't even have the right kind of lotion on the aisle. They don't got that Palmer's cocoa butter. They got that watered down cocoa butter that you pour and it just drips out. You're like, what is this? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. That's an experience I think people sometimes they just like to be around what feels good. So I think a lot of times when people get older, they like to retire and go back to the South, or go back to what's familiar, because it's just a place of comfort. And I think sometimes there's also a feeling of safety in numbers when you're around more people that share your same experience. I love the South. I probably will end up over there too at some point. Let's see. That's an interesting point. Vanity's Mirror said, I think Daniel and Lakeith are too old for the roles. Because that's another piece, because Fred Hampton was like 21, 22 years old. Like, he was very young. But I think that's kind of a Hollywood thing where a lot of times you don't see a lot of 21-year-olds getting in the business very early and being able to command such movies. A lot of people seem to break in around their 30s or the mid 30s, and then you have them playing younger people. It's like Gabrielle Union playing a high schooler and Bring It On, and she was like 29. But I mean, Black folks also look very good for their age, so it was believable. Or who's the one girl, the one actress? They always have her playing a teenager, and was it Bianca Lawson? They have her playing a teenager and everything, and she's definitely in her 40s at this point. She's still been playing a teenager up until a few years ago. Somebody said DC is the South technically. To me, DC, yeah, technically, but to me, DC is a combination of the East Coast culture and Southern culture mixed together. I guess if you're talking geographically, it's, that whole Mason-Dixon line. But culturally, I think it's a blend of like the whole East Coast experience as far as like a Philadelphia, New York. But there's a Southern element to it. Maybe that's why I think so many people love DC, because you kind of get a little bit of both. Because sometimes some people will go to New York and be like, it's not for me, or they'll go to the South and say it's too slow. But like a DC or even sometimes a Baltimore, it just feels like a perfect blend. That's maybe why I liked it or like it so much. Can you guys believe this is year 15 for me in DC too? Like, this is year 15. I've lived in DC longer than I've lived anywhere at this point in life. This was a good little live, guys. I didn't know how this was gonna go. But yeah, we're gonna wind down for a little bit. So I'll do a few more questions and then I'm going to enjoy my night. I want to finish watching this Biggie Smalls documentary on Netflix. Even though so far it seems like everything that's in it we already kind of know, but I just want to watch it to watch. Oh, Stacey Dash. And just add her to the prayer list. She got enough. Yeah. All right, Stacey. Somebody say, am I dating? I'll leave it at that. That's all I got for you. Let's see, where we at? Oh, did I tell y'all? I forgot to share with y'all. Like, I told you my younger brother already had his son, which is pretty cool. So his son is about to turn 1. But my cousin Brandon just had his son this week. I think he was born 2 days ago. So it's kind of cool. I'm always excited about the family. So I'll be glad for COVID to slow so I can actually go and visit everybody, because I haven't seen my family in like it. The only person I've seen in my family was my mother, because she came up here in October and drove up. But I haven't seen anybody. Like, I haven't seen my grandfather since 2019. It makes me nervous because he's turning 87. And I'm like, okay, I need to get over there. I don't know how much more time is promised. And so, yeah. But yeah, good for Brandon. I was happy. He's wanted a son for a good minute because he got 2 girls and then also the daughter that he married into the marriage with. And so now he finally has a son. So good for him. Now I got to catch up, because the whole family was like, well, what's the hold up with you? I'm like, you know how expensive kids are? Give me a minute. Look, I've already accepted I might be one of those older people that has like their first child at like 43, at 45. So, I'll be like 51 bending down to pick up toys off the floor. Gavin Carver said, I lost my girlfriend. Was it? I hope it was just a breakup and not a death. If it was a breakup, there's hope. If it was a death, I'm sorry. All right. So we are gonna wind down. Let's see. I didn't get a chance to get to some of these comments because the thing keeps like it jump scrolls. I don't know if you guys see the same chat I see, but like mine like does this thing where it flows and it jumps and then flows and so I keep losing some people's comments. And it is what it is. Oh no, to Corona. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, see what I mean? Like it's you never know what direction it goes in. So it's that's tough. Yeah, that was one of the hard things when my dad died. Like I think what made it sadder wasn't even that he died. I just felt so bad for my mom because I was like, man, imagine, you know, being married to somebody for like 30 plus years and then they're gone. Like that's the thing that's one of the reasons why I'm scared to even get a dog, because I don't want the dog to die in 14 years and I'm gonna be all sad and crap. I don't even want that kind of hurt, because I get attached to people and animals. Like I'm one of those people. I do not like losing folks. So that hurts. But yeah. That sucks. I'm so sorry, Gavin. Vay Holloway said, no kids for me. And, you know, some people don't want children, and that's perfectly fine. If that's not your lane, don't force it, because everybody isn't meant to be a parent anyway. You know what I mean? And so that's why I don't judge people who don't want children, because that's not everybody's experience. Everybody doesn't want that. Some people live lifestyles where, you know, they have very demanding careers and they love to travel the world and everything. And as wonderful as children are, you have to take things like that into consideration. What is... Oh, okay. That was my little heating unit was like vibrating. All the stuff was shaking. I was like, I know this ain't an earthquake on this live. We about to be done for the night. All right. Yes. And Shanti said kids are expensive. Yes, they are. Let's see. So this is pretty much it, guys. We'll do another live. I might do another one in March, maybe towards the end of the month. I have a few things I'm trying to work on and finish. So, you know, I'm going to start the next So What Happened series really soon. I'm just trying to let the Usher one get its little legs. Usher, nobody really watched the Usher one like that. So I'm like, well, y'all gonna watch that one before I make another one. That crap took all day to put together. So I'm so excited. Not so excited. That's a Janet song. The So What Happened series I'm gonna start working on. Like I said, the next shout out should be coming out really soon. Those who were still waiting for theirs, who submitted back in, I think we did the submissions back in December. All of you guys will be featured in this next one. The ones who were not featured in episode 3 of that. What else am I missing? Those are the main things. For those who are asking about my next Station Head show, I know I was supposed to do one Monday. I forgot what happened. Something happened Monday. We'll be back though in this upcoming week. All right. Anyway, you guys stay safe. This has been a whole lot of fun. Jalil said 12K is not bad. Yeah, 12K is not bad for the Usher video, but I'm like, look, 50,000 of y'all watch Brandy, so I need y'all to give Usher some Brandy energy, or at least the TLC energy. I think the TLC one had like 37,000. But again, I'm grateful for any of you, because I remember there was a time period where my videos got 60 views total, just 60. You know. All right. So it's been really dope. Somebody added the hashtag to your video series. You mean like the So It Happened? I mean, we can do that. But there's some other things I want to do to the channel too. I have a few ideas I'm trying to do. I told y'all I would love to do more like reaction videos to performances, but like I said, all the other YouTubers never want to tell me the tips on how to do that without getting flagged, because you know YouTube will get you for them copyright strikes. Because I would love to go back and revisit older performances and kind of just give my commentary on them, just like 5 or 6 minute videos. But YouTube keep tripping, because even when I did the Usher video, there was one clip in there somewhere. It was a Life Jennings piece, and it got the whole video like removed, and I had to go back, and it took like 4 tries to upload that video, because some of you watched the Usher one live, because we did like a live premiere of it, and then as soon as the live premiere was over, the video got like yanked down. I was like, dang. And so I had to keep going back and I had to find what clip it was that was, you know, getting flagged. It was a lot. It was a lot. All right. All right, I'm getting off this for real now. Somebody said my goldfish died and I was sad. Let me tell you about goldfish. So this will be my last story, and then I'm getting off for real, because it's been 2 hours and 30 minutes. My little brother, you know those beta fishes, or you know the beta fish that you put in a little jar by itself. And so my little brother was like 5 or 6, and so we bought him a beta fish. And my grandparents, or my grandpa and his wife, were coming to visit one time. They came from LA. And so they, you know how older people always need the heat to be on like super, super high. So my brother had his fishing, it was a little fish bowl like this big, and he had it sitting on his dresser, which was right by the vent, right? When my grandpa and his wife got there, they had the heat on like 86. It was so hot in this house. It was hot, just muggy. It was so hot. And then Marcus never cleaned the fish tank that good. And so my Aunt Kim was in town at the same time. And she was like, oh, you know, where's the fish, Marcus? I want to see the fish. And so Marcus was like, oh, he's in the room. And I don't even know if Marcus has fed this fish or what. Man, we went there to go look at the fish. The whole tank was murky. Like the water was foggy. The little fish was just floating on the side in the corner. Like pretty much it got so hot where the fish thing was. The fish, I don't want to say the fish boiled to death because it wasn't that hot, but it was like the room and the space was so hot, and because it was sitting by the vent, it was like the water. I don't know if it was just too much oxygen in the water or what, but that fish was gone. I felt so bad. Marcus was so pissed about that fish. I was like, dang. So, you know, we had to flush it. Poor thing. Marcus got stories for days. I'm not going to tell all his business because he gets mad when I tell these stories, but I'm going to tell one more because I just remember like the other thing he was obsessed with was like losing teeth. Because, you know, you get money from the tooth fairy. So this one time he he's going to be so mad I tell this story, but he had a loose tooth. And it wasn't even like loose. It was a brand new loose where it's just like you think it has a little wiggle on it. He was like 5 or 6, right? And so he knew that if that tooth could come out, he would get some money. So he played with that tooth and kept playing, just picking at it and toothpicking. I'm like, Marcus, just leave it alone, you know, before you mess up a nerve. Like when it's time to come out, it'll come out when it's time. He nope. And he stayed in that bathroom for like 40 minutes. And out of nowhere, I just hear this loud scream. So I'm thinking he stabbed himself in the gum with the toothpick. And what happened was the tooth came out, but it fell down the drain. And so Marcus was like 5 or 6. He was like, I did all of this for nothing. Blood coming all out the mouth. Because, of course, this tooth was not supposed to come out. He went through it. He was so mad. He had like a whole meltdown. And so my mom was like, oh, God, okay. So we wrote like a letter to pretend to be a tooth fairy and still gave him his little money. I was like, Marcus, don't ever do that again. And then one time he found a tooth on the street that he brought in the house. Talking about he lost a tooth. And mind you, this was like a tooth of somebody who's definitely grown. It was one of them back molars. That tooth was so brown. It's like, Marcus, if that tooth is in your mouth, we need to go to the dentist right now. Goodness. Anyway, this has been fun. Good night, folks. I'm going to catch up on the Biggie documentary. Oh, and I figured out an idea for the Zoom, so I will share it with you guys as far as those who want to do the whole reading club thing. Again, the 2 books I was talking about were Not in My Neighborhood. That's the book about pretty much the housing situation in Los Angeles. Also, I've added the Phyllis Hyman biography into that. And then I think the other book we said, I think it's the Phyllis Hyman. Oh, but I did add the Audible version of the autobiography of Malcolm X for those who want to read that. That's on Audible. That's a really good one too. And like I said, they have Lawrence Fishburne doing the reading. It's been an interesting watch. So anybody that's interested in those, I will share with you the details of how we're going to pull this Zoom off. And if it's a disaster, so be it. You know, trial and error. Anyway, oh Lord, what? Since you okay, hold on. Says Deshaun Turner, Jackson, Jordan, or Tyson? Which Michael are you keeping? Okay, well, since the Michael I rock with the most is no longer here, we're gonna let him stay at Grace where he's at. I think Tyson has been through enough. I'd save Tyson. Jordan is a legend, but I feel like Tyson has had a really crappy deck of cards, and so I would have grace for Tyson, even though I wouldn't want to see any of them go. But you know, plus Jordan just now started finding his sense of community. He just now got to that table. So yeah, but there's that. Okay, guys, I'm off the road this time. Good night. Stay safe. Do what you got to do. Be vigilant, especially those in Mississippi and Texas and other states where they're starting to lift all the COVID restrictions. Just use your common sense. You know, people are going to be people. Don't be collateral to the foolery. All right. Anyway, I am out. Good night. Stay safe. All right.